the Washington's central Salish Sea as they have for thousands of years. Here, the Sequab live and protect the land and waters of their ancestors for future generations, as promised by the Point Elliott Treaty of 1855.
Thank you, Councilmember Scheidler. Next item on the agenda, item number 2, approval of the agenda. Do I have a motion to approve tonight's agenda?
So moved.
Councilmember Franklin Johnson has moved. Is there a second?
Second.
Councilmember Franklin Johnson has moved and Councilmember Matthews has seconded to approve tonight's agenda. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Vote is 6-0. The chair votes aye, 7-0. The agenda has been approved. Is there any conflict of interest that council members need to announce tonight? Having seen none, I'd like to move to public comment. The public comment is simply received by a council with no response. Council can't deliberate on items that aren't on the agenda, and the lack of comment is not an endorsement nor denial of comment. And please leave your comments to 3 minutes. The city clerk gathering up the list of people who have signed in on public comment. I'll read them two names at a time. So first person up and the next person you're in the batter circle, make sure you're ready to go. Apparently not enough pages for everybody. Let's see here. I have about 20 names on this sheet and a few people online. So please really stick to that 3-minute comment if you would. First, John Carson. Second, John Floden.
Good evening, Acting City Manager, Mayor, and council members. John Carson, Bainbridge Island Downtown Association. When I moved to Bainbridge Island in 2013, our population was about 23,000 people. Today, it's around 24,600, an increase of 1,600 people over 13 years is not growth. In fact, it's pretty easy to say that Bainbridge is not growing, certainly not in any way that is going to fundamentally change this community. At the same time, other trends tell an even more important story. Since my son's graduated from BHS, enrollment in the school district has declined by more than 10%. The median age on Bainbridge is now over 50, and approximately 27% of our residents are over the age of 65. So why does this matter? Well, they're not isolated statistics. They describe a community that is stagnant both demographically and economically. The city's budget projects sales tax revenue to remain essentially flat, with even a slight decline forecast. It also acknowledges that a significant share of recent sales tax revenue had come from construction activity. Now, if we intentionally reduce opportunities for new construction, we should recognize that this source of revenue will shrink as well. As we continue to restrict places where economic activity can occur, we should not be surprised when eventually the only way to raise revenue is increase property taxes or to simply have a reduction in public services. That's how municipal finance works, and you know that. But there are a couple of quick additional concepts that I want to bring attention to. The first is retail leakage. Bainbridge residents have significant purchasing power, but most of the major purchases, cars, appliances, electronics, and so forth, are made off island, right? So those are dollars leaving our economy. The second is income leakage, otherwise known as earnings outflow. Many people earn great wages on Bainbridge, but then they take those earnings back to the communities where they live. And the mayor has noted this before. The rest of the county loves us for the wages that are earned here, but are not spent here or reinvested here. Quite simply, we need to have a workforce that is able to live locally. When I look at this data, I do see a path forward, and I do look at this data every single day. A vast majority of Bainbridge Island is conservation zone, low density residential, single family units. We can debate whether or not this is the most effective or efficient use of our land. But Winslow, and specifically the Winslow sub area, is different. It's our economic engine, and it should have the flexibility, density, FAR, affordable and mid-level housing, and the development capacity needed to support the businesses, employees, residents, and everything we need to keep our local economy healthy. Not doing so is to cut off our economic nose to spite our face. If we don't do this, the trends that we already see coming are likely to continue: fewer children and young families, increased difficulty attracting workers and professionals, shops with increased costs and shrinking margins that are forced to close or cut back their hours and services. And certainly in the future, this would not be a place for my boys, who I mentioned graduated at BHS, or any other kids who graduated at BHS will be able to afford to come back to, should they choose. So
Sure.
I welcome a lengthier discussion, should your time allow, individually or together. Thanks.
Thank you, John. John Flynn, followed by Mark. I'm sorry, I can't read your last name, but you were the third person who signed up.
Good evening. My name is John Flodine, and I'm here to voice my support for Caitlin Lombardi's reappointment to the Race Equity Committee. I listened to Councilmember Lant's comments opposing Caitlin's reappointment during the June 23rd council meeting and have some concerns. She said appointees have, in her words, every right to speak publicly and advocate for their views. I'm personally glad to hear that we agree that the First Amendment is a critical element of our democracy, especially right now. But then she explained she's not prepared to support her reappointment to the committee because her public commentary directed at council members has created division and made the committee's work harder, not easier. Please take a moment to think about what that standard actually means. It means you may advocate as long as you don't make this governing body feel uncomfortable. Only say things that this group agrees with. Be deferential. Your appointment, and if so, your appointment or reappointment in this matter is safe. Dr. King has warned us about this demand, that progress on racial equity wait until it has been made palatable to the white moderate, that change is only possible when it stops causing friction. Division is the word white people often reach for when their real objection is that someone has refused to maintain the status quo. But the work of building racial equity is not passive, and history has shown us that it is not easy for people who look like me and Councilmember Lant. It requires that we, the white majority, learn to deal with our discomfort, because if we truly believe this work is necessary and possible, we risk our comfort for something that is more equitable for everyone. Every other member of the subcommittee supported Caitlin's reappointment. The council members who stood up for her, the ones who pushed back hard enough to force the entire body to reconsider her, tonight are Black women. To me, it seems Councilmember Lant has decided that her comfort mattered more than others on the committee, who I can only assume are into many more divisive situations in our community and within this work. Caitlin has never been somebody who is satisfied with the status quo. I have known her since first grade in Miss Roberts' class at Blakely Elementary, and I remember her telling me about the concept of reparations for Black enslaved people in high school. She has worked in the nonprofit civil rights space for years and was recruited onto this very committee because of her well-conceived opinions. And now her voice and those opinions are the reason given to discontinue her service. I hope you will read what she actually wrote in the Bainbridge Review back in May. You will find she lays out facts and trusts readers to draw their own conclusion. This is not division. This is a smart and valued member of our community doing her job. So with that, I ask that you reappoint Caitlin Lombardi to the Race Equity Committee and let her continue to do the work necessary that our community desperately needs. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. John, sorry, followed by Mark. Sorry, I can't read out your last name. And then Ellen, I'm having a problem with that last name too. Sorry.
The
Thank
name
you.
is Ashley. I'm Mark Ashley, and I've lived on Bainbridge since 1988. Last fall's negative chatter on social media about a project at 625 Winslow Way prompted me to attend my first Planning Commission meeting last September to find out what was so disturbing. I left impressed by the project. To those of you who pushed for it, thank you for your vision. When I moved here, this was a smaller, more diverse community, especially in class, age, and income. Like many things, housing was a lot more affordable. With insubstantial income and a loan for the down payment from my parents, I managed to buy a little house for about twice my annual income. My son and daughter-in-law couldn't possibly have managed that 4 years ago, even with higher incomes and a loan from their parents. That's why I enthusiastically support the votes that the majority of the Planning Commission and City Council have made for a comprehensive plan that might actually induce the building of truly affordable housing. I want more ambitious solutions, but I'm encouraged by the example you're setting. We can't wait for answers from Olympia and DC. We have to make our best efforts here and now. I want to speak to and thank you for just one of the votes you've made. Thank you for reducing parking minimums across the housing element and Winslow sub-area plan. Without those reduced parking requirements, affordable multifamily housing will be even more challenging to build. According to the Sightline Institute in Seattle, required parking spaces increase the cost of construction and the cost of units by some 10 to 20% in the Seattle area. That mostly kills affordability. Expanding our housing mix is far more important to our community's future than adding more asphalt to park our cars. The challenge to find parking in Winslow can be irritating, but it's crucial that we prioritize housing people, not cars. The real crisis on the island is not parking. It's the dearth of housing options for a range of low and middle incomes, as I once was. With its ferry and bus terminals, Winslow is a transportation hub, much like Seattle's light rail stations. Multifamily housing has sprouted around them, just as in Winslow, which is ideal for residents who choose to live without a car. Winslow's housing options have diversified since incorporation, and some 30 years later, it's the island's prime example of a walkable urban village. The increase in housing options since incorporation has been wonderful, but the scarcity of affordable units is appalling. Thank you to those of you who are working to change that.
Thank you, Mark Ashley, and followed by Ellen and Alice Hunting.
It's Ellen Lockhart. We moved to Bainbridge 43 years ago. We began as ferry commuters, and eventually my partner, Nina, and I formed two national businesses, which we built and sold. We ultimately had about 100 employees over a 12-year span, and I'm proud to say that we didn't pay ourselves till all our employees had health insurance. That was really important to us. After that, I was on the Bainbridge Arts and Humanities Council Board, and I was one of the founding members of Climate Action Bainbridge. I'm here for a reality check. Bainbridge Island is a diverse, semi-rural community with a sole source aquifer, limited infrastructure, and a small number of taxpayers, many of whom are elderly on fixed incomes. Those of us who moved here did so for the friendly small town, abundance of forests, beaches, and the lack of traffic. We did not choose the urbanized environment proposed by this radical council majority. And if council bothered to ask residents what they want, they would find that the vast majority are opposed to this current proposal for overdevelopment. This is not a balanced growth plan. It is a reckless crapshoot with no credible data supporting the concept that greater density always creates affordability. The data doesn't exist. You're guessing, really, basically. I mean, there's some data that says, yes, there'll be greater affordability and greater equity as a result of this. There's other data that says not at all. So with the current plan, you basically are gambling with our future and that of our children and grandchildren, and I'm concerned about that. The maximum density proposed by council may well threaten our precious, irreplaceable water source. While this council majority prefers to ignore it, the groundwater management plan includes the following passage, and I quote, "Current usage could be sustainable or unsustainable, depending on what the actual values are for sustainable yield and current use. Because these actual values cannot be known with certainty, it is not possible to say definitively if the current usage is sustainable or unsustainable." There's actually ambiguity. So if we gamble and lose with water, we're basically all screwed. And I'm on the south end now. We're now rationing water without any population increase. So I feel like a canary in the mine, and it concerns me and my neighbors greatly. Maximum density will also demand massive infrastructure expense. a new sewer plant and roads. Who will pay for those? Not the feds. The state has no money. Will that mean that vulnerable taxpayers will be taxed off the island as taxes increase to pay for this new infrastructure? It's a concern. We're told by passionate advocates that this maximum density will increase affordability and equity. I've yet to find any creditable studies that ensure that these conditions are consistently solved with market rate housing plus a smattering of affordable housing, which is what our current plan is. Where is the objective data? There is none. So I support balanced growth with a focus on affordable versus market rate housing, and I am strongly opposed to the current reckless council proposal to maximize density on Bainbridge Island. Thank you.
Thank you, Ellen. Alice Hunting, followed by Debbie Haase.
Good evening, council members, interim city manager, city attorney, and city staff. Happy Pride, last day. My name is Alice Hunting. I'm an island resident living in the Linwood Center neighborhood. I'm here tonight to express my support for the reappointment of Caitlin Lombardi to the Race Equity Advisory Committee. Caitlin brings a critical and compassionate perspective to REAC and to this city. It's my experience that an equity lens, which Caitlin has consistently and fairly delivered to the council in her role as co-chair on REAC and to the broader community through letters to the editor and op-ed pieces, doesn't always feel cozy and comfortable. When I feel that heat of defense rise, that's often how I know something is worthy of my attention and reflection. I believe it's important to sit with that discomfort. I urge you to reappoint Caitlin for another term on REAC. If it's not Caitlin, let it be someone equally willing to put themselves in service of equity and speak truth to power at the expense of the many comforts and conveniences we enjoy in this community. Thank you.
Thank you, Alice. Debbie Haase, followed by Eric Stahl.
Hi, I'm Debbie Housie, living here on Bainbridge Island for, 35 or 40 years. And I'm here asking that all the council members abide by the First Amendment and the freedom of speech. And listening to the meeting from 6/23, I agree with City Council, Councilmember Laurent, who said that committee members are private citizens with every right to speak publicly and advocate for their views. But that doesn't just end when you don't like what somebody says or writes in the newspaper. People working on a committee such as REAC have the right to the freedom of speech, just as everyone else does. And if the council goes down the path of not reappointing Caitlin Lombardi as a REAC member because one member of the council is now allowing the freedom of speech, where does that lead our city? The council member Lant also made a comment about the city's directed role, or as directed by the council, referring to REAC. Well, REAC's role is to stand up for equity on Bainbridge Island. Standing up for equity is what the city directed Caitlin Lombardi and REAC to do. And so I'm not going to restate a lot of the things about what Caitlin's contributions have been, because I think you already know that. But I do ask that you all reappoint Caitlin Lombardi to REAC and not hold her back because she speaks truth about equity. And when there's these sort of efforts to silence people who are speaking up for equity, that really points out how important REAC is, and maybe even more important now. And yes, I'm going to keep saying equity, equity, equity. I'm speaking right now more to community members as well as the council, who have gone to social platforms to attack council members for using the word equity and still say that they want a welcoming city. This cannot be a genuine welcoming city without equity. And I invite everyone to learn what equity means and how it aligns with the city council's values of a welcoming city. And I don't mean welcoming just to white people, welcoming to everybody. And I think you'll agree that equity is important. And a completely different topic, OFAST. Please do not put up speed cameras, license plate readers. This data is vulnerable and can be observed by ICE and track everyone. And this would be incredibly dangerous and damaging to Bainbridge Islanders, the people that are blessed to come here, the people we are blessed to have come here as skilled contractors and builders and landscapers who can come here to work on the island. Putting those cameras up would put them at very real risk. And I ask you, please don't do it. Thank you.
Thank you, Debbie. Eric Stahl and Kisa Nishimoto.
Good evening, Eric Stahl. I am a member of REAC for 5 more hours. Proud and grateful for the opportunity to have served for 2 terms on that volunteer commission. I'm here to offer my personal full-throated support for Caitlin Lombardi's reappointment to REAC. Caitlin is the model of what you want in a community board leader of this type. She's born and raised on Bainbridge Island. She's well-versed in the subject matter REAC deals with, both as a matter of her personal commitment and professionally through the Who We Are project, a nonprofit that focuses on educational material on the history of anti-Black racism in this country. She's also the most level-headed, fair-minded person I've had the pleasure to serve with in my 6 years on REAC. And I don't say that lightly. I have watched her lead with integrity, sincerity, and forethought. She will meet with literally anybody, including and especially people she disagrees with. She is committed to the truth and to inclusion. And when she takes a stand, whether you like it or not, whether you agree with it or not, she tells you why. Speaking of which, as has come up in your last meeting and earlier already tonight, she did write an op-ed last month that took issue with Councilmember Nelson. And here's what I want to say about that. Every one of you who sits here knows you need thick skin to be in the position you're in. Criticism comes with the territory, and I will say every one of your predecessors and all of you that I've worked with has demonstrated resilience to do the job and managed to do it even when things get contentious. Mayor Meraki, we had some moments when you were the liaison on REAC, and we worked through it, and I appreciate it. And I know Caitlin does too. She understands what's involved in the job you have. At the same time, citizens don't give up their right to express opinions about elected officials just because they volunteer on a group like REAC or any other city commission. And you don't really want it otherwise. Insisting otherwise, besides being repugnant to the idea of free speech and the First Amendment, would be detrimental to the city. You would essentially be saying, if you want to join a city committee, you have to hold your tongue. And what you're going to get out of that is nothing but sycophants and cowards applying for these committees. That's not good for the city. That's not good for your feedback loop. And the fact that someone has been critical of you is not a reason to refuse to reappoint them, particularly when they have a record as a dedicated volunteer. Councilman Nelson, I want you to know there is a concern, and it predates the op-ed, and it's not just Caitlin, that you aren't just asking questions about REAC or worrying about legal liability, but that there might be another agenda here to dismantle the city's commitment to equity, to race equity, or to pander to those who do. I would invite you to prove that wrong, and I think you've got the opportunity to prove or disprove it tonight, but I would urge all of you to unanimously approve and reappoint Caitlin tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Eric. Kisa Nishimoto and then Benjamin Shemekto. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. Good evening, council members. Thank you for this opportunity. It's my first time speaking at a city council meeting. I am here to speak in support of reappointing Caitlin Lombardi. I am a proud daughter of immigrants from Japan and the Philippines. My family came to the States in 1986. I know Caitlin because we worked together at a nonprofit. And I listened to the previous meeting on June 23rd. I understand that there was concerns about Caitlin filling this role as a co-lead. And I want to speak to her character and why I think that she is a deserving person to continue in this role. Last year, I had the opportunity to take a part-time role with the National Park Service and work at the Japanese American Exclusion Memorial. This was a weekend role. I felt so fortunate, but I would not have been able to work this job and have housing here. On a personal level, Caitlin believed in the work, and she allowed me to park my camper on her property free of charge. She understands that housing is not sustainable, affordable for everyone here, but because she allowed that opportunity for me out of her own generosity, because she believes in equitable housing and access, that in turn allowed me to educate Bainbridge Island community members about the atrocities and injustices of the Japanese American incarceration, and for visitors from beyond. I'm very confident in Caitlin's ability to have productive discourse. I understand that varying opinions can be uncomfortable at times, but I think it shows that this topic matters. And I can't speak to all of her qualifications and why I think she should continue in this role in a matter of 3 minutes, but I would like to invite you, Councilmember Lant, to coffee, tea, and I'd be happy to speak with you more if you have any questions. Thank you for your time, and I, again, want to support and urge you to reappoint Caitlin Lombardi for co-lead of REACT. Thank you.
Thank you, Kisa. Benjamin, then Mira Rosenkotz.
Good evening, Council. My name is Benjamin Bullitt Schmeckel, and my grandparents and my father are buried on this island, and it's an important place to me. I have the honor of reading on behalf of Caitlin. She's in Chicago, so these are her words. It has been an honor to serve on REACT in this past, and excuse me, I'll start again. It has been an honor to serve on REACT these past 3 years and to be selected as co-chair by my amazing fellow committee members. I'm in Chicago tonight with my colleagues at the Who We Are Project, an organization dedicated to telling the truth about anti-Black racism in history so that we can understand and address present-day inequities. So I share the statement by proxy to address whatever conflict may be felt about my reappointment, personal advocacy, and editorial writing. My latest editorial, written on my own behalf, as they always are, discussed how housing policies can create racial segregation, quite intentionally in the past, but still effectively in the present. I shared concerns about how our fears about affordable housing ultimately ushered in a council member willing to comply with Trump's attacks on DEI and civil rights and employment. While some people feel offended, everything I said in the article can be easily verified. And no, I never called anyone a racist. Discussing the racialized consequences of policy shouldn't feel like name-calling to anyone, but here we are. In the piece, I identified myself as a member of REACT because I have been accused of hiding the fact that I am a REACT member when writing about equity issues in the past. I also identified myself as a mother of 3 daughters, a wife, a lifelong Islander, and a staff member of the Who We Are Project. I'm all these things. And I remain incredibly concerned about any council member willing to proactively support a MAGA civil rights agenda while regularly condemning their own race equity advisory committee. In 2026, letting such beliefs and behaviors go unaddressed is not something I can stomach. So if advisory committee members, particularly those on the Race Equity Advisory Committee, should not otherwise speak out about racism, past or present, then you should not vote for my appointment. If Bainbridge residents are not allowed to take a personal stance or disagree with our elected officials on critical issues and also volunteer their time on city advisory committees, then this role is not for me. It is my life's work, far beyond my role on REACT, to use my voice to fight for racial justice, even when it is hard. I work every day for an organization dedicated to exposing the truth about anti-Black racism in our nation's history so that we can build a better future for everyone. I volunteer and support organizations addressing racial injustice in numerous arenas, from bail reforms to reparations. I use my voice as a writer to call attention to matters of justice and to call on my community to know better that we can do better. These are not easy, comfortable conversations meant to please everyone. These are difficult conversations meant to shine a light on hard truth so that we can address them rather than look away and repeat history. I'm sorry that defending my reappointment has taken up the time and energies and brought even more scrutiny upon so many remarkable people in our community. Thank you.
Thank you, Benjamin. Followed now by Mira Rosenkotz and then Lydia Henning.
Hi, Council. Mira Rosencoats here again. Thank you for your work on the comp plan and development regulations. For some of you, it's been months. For some of you, it's been years. And I'm sure for some of you, it's felt like a lifetime. I'm asking you tonight to vote to approve the development regulations with the updates you made at the June 16th meeting. I'm asking you to continue to make it easier to build affordable housing and continue to make it easier to build apartments in Winslow. I'm also asking you not to raise the parking minimums in Winslow. Not only do they increase building costs and make units less affordable, but they're simply not needed. If you have a difficult time driving downtown during the summer, don't drive downtown during the summer. Find a different way to get there. Dust off a bike in the garage, get a ride from a neighbor, pick up a backpack, take a cross-island hike. People who will live at 625 Winslow Way will certainly find a different way to move themselves and their groceries, kids, boxes, buy nothing, scores, and so can we. The city is currently taking several steps to promote alternative transportation, which has been awesome. Sustainable Transportation Coordinator Hannah Bocher's community bike ride was so fun, as well as the city's e-bike voucher program, and now the new Saturday shuttle that takes passengers on a large loop in the greater downtown area. We're a city that is moving towards the future, biking, rolling, skating, scootering, walking, running, towards a future of Bainbridge Island that is less dependent on cars and has more alternative transportation infrastructure. Creating these types of events and programs is where we should be putting our time, money, and energy. Raising the parking minimums is setting our sights in the opposite direction. I'll ask you again this week to dream and to wonder, how carless could Bainbridge be? What would it look like if everyone owned and used a bike? What might be possible if we stopped imposing our own ideas about car ownership on everyone else? I'd also like to piggyback on everyone else who just spoke about REAC. Equity lens is literally on your council priorities and areas of emphasis for 2025-2026. You're going to be on the wrong side of this thing if you're not reappointing Caitlin. I think it's as simple as that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mira. Lydia Henning, followed by Bevan Taylor.
Hi, City Council members. My name is Lydia. I live on Bainbridge. I want to share some quotes tonight from a book called Paved Paradise, How Parking Explains the World by Henry Graybar. It's about parking in the US and how the parking crisis has exacerbated issues ranging from the climate disaster to affordable housing. The parking crisis is not, as some may suggest, that we do not have enough parking in Winslow. The crisis is that we have degraded the overall quality of our town and shared public spaces across America in order to accommodate cars at the cost of other forms of social gathering and transportation. Graybar writes, using tools like parking requirements, single-family zoning, historic preservation, minimum lot sizes, and lawsuits under California environmental law, the state's homeowners wrote the playbook for how to exclude new neighbors and look righteous while doing it. I couldn't come up with a better list myself of the tools in the toolboxes of those who continue to say they support affordable housing on Bainbridge, but grab onto any mechanism available to them to prevent it from actually getting built. From single-family zoning to dismissed environmental appeals, to now generating a sense of crisis around having to drive back and forth on Winslow to find a parking spot, these concerns are all used together to try to prevent construction of affordable housing by making it unfeasible, impossible, or too expensive. Graber also writes, the parking shortage functions as a political cudgel to keep out new neighbors. Laws that require every building to include parking prevent us from creating housing, especially affordable housing, because parking costs so much to construct and takes up so much space. Because of the principled, commendable, and completely legal motion and votes to increase space and bonus FARs in Winslow during your June 16th council meeting, we will now have the much needed tools to construct affordable housing. But there are still those cudgels of parking minimums and others that will surely crop up that would chip away at this meaningful process. I hope City Council members will recognize these moves for what they are, which are obstructions to affordable housing, and continue the great work you've done in making motions and working from principal standpoints to make our island affordable and accessible to all. On a personal note, I live in an apartment with 2 adults where we only have 1 parking spot. And with the help of a Washington State e-bike voucher, I was able to purchase an e-bike that I now ride to the grocery store, to the beach, to the coffee shop, and other places I need to go. I refuse to accept the narrative that we are and will always be a car-dependent society, when I know there are more creative, climate-friendly, and visionary solutions, including those for our aging and disabled population and community members, to how to get from point A to point B. As always, I commend the work that the council has done to get us to the point we're at now, and I will be cheering on from the sidelines when we finally cross the finish line.
Thank you, Lydia. And Bevan Taylor, followed by Caslin Daniels.
Bevan Taylor, I live on the south end. Good evening, council members. I look forward to you voting to confirm Caitlin Lombardi to another term on REACT tonight. I was disappointed to learn last week that some members of council are choosing not to vote for Caitlin's reappointment based on positions she took in her advocacy. I am, however, confident that there are at least 5 members of this council who agree that removing or failing to reappoint a member of any city committee because they criticized a sitting council member sets a precedent that will undermine the integrity and independence of committees and their members. To those who worry that Caitlin created division by criticizing a council member or feel her words fostered mistrust and intolerance, I want to say it's okay for you to feel that way. But please know there are many, many people in this community who do not share your perspective. Conversations about race will often be contentious, and significant disagreements are common. If we are serious, and I think that we are, about doing the difficult work of creating a more just society, let's prioritize progress and dispel the idea that it is necessary or possible to always be comfortable. There are, after all, worse things in the world than having it pointed out that one's actions have racist implications. The other issue I want to address tonight are concerns about limited sewer and water infrastructure capacity. In the past several months, we've seen these concerns leveraged against even modest upzonings in Winslow. I've seen the majority on council move in a positive direction, but I just want to run through a few facts. 1, upzoning encourages a higher density of homes in Winslow, but it only grants the right to apply for building permits. It does not represent a guarantee that sewer capacity will always be available. 2, all proposed developments are required to submit a water sewer availability request to obtain a building permit. Projects are reviewed, and those that do not receive a binding commitment for water and sewer access cannot get built. 3, if or when infrastructure capacity does reach a limit, the city can issue a moratorium on new hookups, effectively halting construction. This has been done recently on the South Island sewer system and KPUD's South Bainbridge water system. These moratoriums based on insufficient capacity are both legal and common. These are some of the guardrails that will help ensure we do not overrun our infrastructure capacity. I extend my thanks to the majority on council who understand that trying to use zoning and development regulations to manage infrastructure capacity is unnecessary and risks continuing a status quo in which sprawling, low-density, unaffordable development proliferates. This council sits ready to make some significant positive changes to the comprehensive plan. These represent a first step towards addressing affordability and a host of related issues. I encourage you to move those ordinances and regulations forward to a public hearing and final adoption. Thank you for all your hard work.
Thank you, Bevan. Caslin, and then Stephen Hoskins.
Hello, my name is Caslin Daniels, and tonight I am speaking on behalf of my friend Marcia Cutting, who is at home with a cough. I am Marcia Cutting, and I live on Curtis Loop, I use a power wheelchair, and I consider myself very fortunate to live close to downtown. I want to advocate for increased bonus FAR for affordable housing in the Winslow area for a couple of reasons. The first is that any building that has more than 4 units has to include accessible apartments. ADUs scattered around the island don't have to be accessible. The design of the unit itself may be accessible, but it may not end up being accessible as it's built. There are far too few accessible, affordable apartments on the island if you earn too much to qualify for low-income housing. Second, we have a walkable, rollable downtown, and even the Safeway Plaza has made significant upgrades for people using wheelchairs and walkers. People can move between them using the smooth asphalt of the STO trail. Contrast that with living behind someone's house in the north or south end, where there are few, if any, sidewalks and mostly narrow shoulders. Thank goodness for BI Ride, but I prefer being able to roll out of my front door and head downtown at a moment's notice. Our population is aging, and now everyone thinks about aging when they buy a house. Fewer still think about becoming disabled, but if you live long enough, it will happen. If you have enough money, you can buy a condominium downtown, but if you're middle income, forget it. There's virtually nothing that is affordable and accessible in Winslow, the Ferry District, and the High School Road area, so please increase the bonus FAR for affordable housing in all 3 areas. Thank you.
Thank you. Stephen Hodgkin, followed by Olivia Hall.
Good evening, City Council. Steve Hoskins. I live here in the Winslow sub area. My first short comment is just to ask you to reopen the candidate availability for city manager, hopefully so we can get some more diverse candidates, at least so that Mr. Morrow, if it is him in the end, it doesn't look like he just kind of fell into the role. And if that doesn't work out, I'd ask you to consider offering interim city manager Shroya double the salary and passing a law making it illegal to criticize her. That sounds perfect. My broad comment is to thank Council for your bold decision 2 weeks ago to return our development regulations to the values in the February LCA. And I want to express my strong support for Ordinance 2026-05 and the development regulations as they stand in your packets tonight. Starting with the legalistic stuff, we know that these development regulations comply with state law. The February LCA showed clearly that those regulations meet our multifamily housing allocation, albeit with only 99 units of wiggle room. Commerce has reviewed that exact analysis and written that it indicates sufficient capacity. And with these regulations implemented, we can move forward confident that they'll rule our updated comp plan compliant. Now, I don't know about you, but I'm thoroughly sick of talking about the bare minimum we have to do to comply with state law. So I want to celebrate what you've done with these development regulations. You've taken a bold step towards building the vision that's expressed right throughout our comp plan. And you've done this by enabling 3 different types of housing. First, you've created the conditions for the market to invest in a more compact, vibrant and diverse Winslow, a walkable, rollable and connected neighbourhood which enables a lesser reliance on cars and on space to park them. By enabling a wider variety of housing, you've made room for a more diverse community, and you've benefited the existing community by giving us more options on how we live. It includes renters like me, seniors looking to downsize, folks with accessibility needs and young families looking for a starter home. And while I'm sure that this will be cast as maximal density, let's be clear that we're talking about 3 stories covering 1/3 of a lot or 2 stories covering half of a lot. Second, you've created enough bonus density that some private developers will be able to build mixed income housing with affordable components. I want to thank you for hearing and responding to the Planning Commission's plea to reconsider those higher bonus FARs. We know from Eco Northwest that that level is essential to make mixed income housing work, so I'm glad we've got them in there. And the February LCA also showed that developers will uptake some of that mixed income range. And third, we also know that a majority of our affordable housing needs will only get built if they're city-led and subsidised. I know that for 4 to 5 stories and bonus FAR of 3 to 4 might sound intimidating, but what you've really done is give both the city and nonprofits like HRB a ton of options and flexibility for when they go to build affordable housing projects. They've got lots of options and they can use land and taxpayer-funded subsidies in the most efficient and cost-effective way. So what I'm asking tonight is simple. Don't undo the great progress by repeating a cycle we've already been through. We had the February LCA, then we chipped away at it by lowering bonus FAR. We rejected the base FAR of 1 from Planning Commission's request. And suddenly we're here in June and the memo is telling us that we don't meet our targets again. Please don't repeat that cycle. Let's not be a place that drags our feet and tries to calibrate every decimal point of density in search of bare minimum compliance. Instead, let's start building towards the comp plan's bold vision for Winslow. And I urge you to move Ordinance 2026-05 forward to public hearing and approve it as is. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephen. Olivia Hall, followed by Jens Bormer.
Here we are again. Hi, I'm Olivia Hall, and I live in Winslow. I am co-chair of the Race Equity Advisory Committee, but right now I am speaking as a private resident of Bainbridge Island. I am here today to urge council to reappoint Caitlin Lombardi to REAC. I want to first be clear about exactly what we are talking about and why she was not appointed last week. Caitlin Lombardi wrote an op-ed as a private resident that appeared in the Bainbridge Review with her own analysis of council member Nelson's actions that he took on the dais. Last week, Councilmember Lant then took it upon herself to block Caitlin's reappointment to REAC on the grounds that Caitlin is divisive, and that purported divisiveness would make REAC's work more difficult. Thus, she would no longer be on the committee. She should no longer be on the committee. As for difficulty, making progress to further racial equity has always been difficult. The city's work is difficult. Being a council member for this entire community is difficult. But we all do this work regardless of that difficulty. We do it because we believe in our rights as people in this country to participate in our government, to have a voice and to strive to be heard. Turning towards the word divisive, labeling Caitlin as divisive was specious and misleading, used as a political tactic that cannot be substantiated beyond the echo chamber of Facebook and Nextdoor. There are many people who would never use that word to describe Caitlin, and many of them do not spend their time talking to each other on the internet. So tonight, you are confronted with a choice. Are you a council that is willing to allow Islanders to have a voice regardless of whether or not you like what they have to say? Or are you a council that does not tolerate dissent and retaliates when things are called divisive? One thing has always been very clear to me. Whether a private resident or a sitting council member or a city volunteer, everyone has the right to their opinion. If being divisive makes our work more difficult, so be it. I, for one, am used to it. It's what I signed up for as a REAC member, and it's what you signed up for too. But prohibiting someone from embarking on that work because you believe their opinions are divisive is an erosion of all of our First Amendment rights. I would hope that the people of Bainbridge Island, a place that saw droves come out to march for No Kings, would agree that our rights to assemble, to organize, to challenge our elected leaders are at risk at the federal level, and that they shouldn't be at risk here too. Caitlin cannot be here to defend herself tonight because of her job. She is currently in Chicago hosting an event entitled Reckoning America's 250th, Memories, Truth, and the Stories That Define a Country, featuring the mayor of Chicago, Brandon Johnson. I say all of this to illustrate how even off REAC, Caitlin continues to work for justice and equity. And I know that while she was on a plane, she was doing work for REAC despite all of this. And now, speaking as a REAC member, she is truly a vital part of our committee. I've had the privilege to work alongside her for these few past years, and she has shown herself to be tolerant, understanding, and an educator. I truly admire her, not in spite of, but because she has never been afraid to speak up when she sees injustice in our community. I count myself lucky that I even get to know Caitlin, much less that I get to learn from her every time we work together. And I hope you feel the same.
Thank you, Olivia. Jens, and followed by Jing Fong.
Good evening, Council. Good evening to the community. My name is Jens Böhmer, and I'm a resident here on Bainbridge Island since 2014. And I'm speaking on my own behalf and inspired by my 13-year-old daughter, who is not here with me right now. Just for transparency, I served 2 terms on the Climate Change Advisory Committee. I'm currently not an advisory committee member. I'm grateful for the opportunity that we can have a conversation here among you and also with the community about the council's decision to reappoint Caitlin Lombardi to REAC. After all, engaging in conversations around the scope of the REAC committee is very important to me and my family. I also believe it is an opportunity for us to learn to listen, to learn from each other, and to show empathy and grow as individuals and decision makers. I am a white, cisgendered male resident, and I have so many blind spots. I learn almost on a daily basis that I have many blind spots. I do not see a lot of the challenges that REAC is working on and through, and I'm grateful for their work. I admit that I often feel very challenged. It does not feel comfortable. I feel a lot of discomfort about my trajectory of growth, or what I hope is growth. But I believe in that it makes me a better listener, a more inclusive expert in my field, and hopefully a more self-aware person. My understanding of Caitlin's work and her writing is in the local newspaper is that she offers a strong voice and holds up a mirror supporting the goals of REAC. I welcome having knowledgeable and passionate individuals on advisory committees. Me and my daughter, my daughter reminded me also of the importance of the First Amendment, and we welcome the invitation to talk about how we can welcome and shape change on this island. Change, she told me this afternoon, is inevitable, so it comes down to the way we shape it. I therefore hope that all members of this body will take the opportunity to reappoint Caitlin and hope that she can help REAC do their job. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And then Jing Fong, followed by Sarah Blossom.
Good evening. I'm Jing Fong. I live in Winslow, and I'm a member of the city's Race Equity Advisory Committee. Tonight, I'm speaking as a private resident of Bainbridge Island and urge you to reappoint Caitlin Lombardi to REAC, where she remarkably serves as its co-chair. Caitlin is brilliant, insightful, and refreshingly kind. She works for the Who We Are Project, a nonprofit producing educational resources on anti-Black racism in U.S. history and working toward healing and change. She's married to a school district employee, raising 3 young daughters, and still finds time to volunteer in our community. She puts in endless hours for REAC, and I've watched her do it. When REAC took on advising the city's guiding principles, Caitlin shepherded that work alongside REAC colleague Eric Stahl and myself, and in collaboration with council members Schneider and Hytopoulos, through further revisions ahead of its consideration by the Planning Commission. That's not someone causing a distraction. That's someone doing the work in the room with this council and in good faith. I understand Councilmember Lant opposes Caitlin's reappointment because of views Caitlin expressed in an op-ed. I want to be clear about what actually happened. Caitlin broke no rules. She shared her opinion about something said on the dais, and that is her right, not just as a courtesy we extend her, but as a constitutional one. She didn't lie. She didn't violate any policy. She spoke. Yes, public service comes with scrutiny, elected and volunteer alike. That's the deal we signed up for. But scrutiny is not the same as punishment, and right now this feels like punishment for dissent. We should be allowed to disagree publicly. That's not a loophole in public service. It's the foundation of it. Councilmember Lant has said Caitlin's op-ed is a distraction from our work and called instead for a quote-unquote more cohesive, unified approach that is more tolerant and understanding and educational. I'll say plainly what that sounds like to me. It sounds like REACT members should stay quiet about racism if speaking up makes someone uncomfortable. So let me set the record straight. REACT is unified on our mission, our values, and our commitment to this work. We don't always agree on every approach, and we don't need to. Caitlin's op-ed isn't a distraction from that work, it's an example of it. Someone brave enough to name what she saw and stand up for justice. I wish I had half her gumption. I worry this sets a precedent for REACT that speaking up could cost you your seat. Because here's the real question, where does this end? Where are the lines drawn? Disagreeing with someone doesn't give you the authority to take away their right to speak. Caitlin Lombardi didn't break a rule. She broke the illusion that this work is supposed to be comfortable. It isn't. It was never meant to be. I urge you to reappoint Caitlin Lombardi.
Thank you, Jean. Sarah Blossom.
Good evening. As you know, I'm Sarah Blossom, a member of the Planning Commission. I'm the current chair, but I'm here speaking tonight in my individual capacity. And I want to share my perspective as an appointed commission member. Although there were several planning-related items on your agenda tonight, and I'm much more comfortable speaking to those or correcting the record on how actions of the PC were misrepresented by a previous speaker, I'm going to use my 3 minutes to support the reappointment of Caitlin Lombardi. I was reappointed to my position last week, and I guess whether or not I get to serve out that term will depend on how my comments land with council tonight. Because we have to worry about that now. Because now we have to worry about that. I've been critical of the council from the dais, not in an op-ed piece written in an individual capacity outside of my role as planning commissioner, but as a planning commissioner in a meeting sitting on the dais. Would you like to slap my wrist? I heard last week it said that Caitlin's op-ed will impact how the committee functions. It's one thing if we as committee members act in a way that is bullying or abusive towards our fellow committee members or staff. Certainly in that instance, the functioning of the committee is in jeopardy. As I mentioned earlier, I was just reappointed, and as I watched last week's meeting, I was questioning my decision to re-up. I thought I was signing up for an advisory role to help the council make decisions that were in the best interests of our community as a whole, not in the best interests of its own personal agendas. I will now consider myself warned as a planning commissioner, as an appointed volunteer, that I'm only here to support the council. And by support, that means I can only speak positively, can never criticize. I must compliment you, applaud you, build you up. I'm not sure that's what I signed up for, though.
Thanks, Sarah. That's the last of the people who've signed up. Is there anyone in the audience who would like to come forward? Please come forward and state your name, and please keep your comments to 3 minutes.
Okay, I'm Charlie Kratzer, and just a little background as far as my knowledge about advisory committees comes from being on ETAC for 8 years, 5 years as the chair. And I must say, when starting off with an advisory committee, we were trained on the Open Public Meetings Act. We were trained on what's a conflict of interest. And we were told to declare one at the beginning of each meeting if we had one on any topic that would be coming up. Plus, it was made clear that if we were going to speak for the committee, to represent ETAC to the outside world, at a meeting, a presentation, whatever, that we needed to have a vote within ETAC before that could happen. That would have to be approved to allow me to go and represent the committee. And that would have to show up in the minutes from that meeting. So the one thing I think that hasn't been brought up enough is that I have Caitlin's op-ed here. And although she only mentions a couple times being with REAC, She says, of which I'm a member, and then at the back on the credits, it says that she serves on the city's Race Equity Advisory Committee. Now, I don't know if she had something written, which I think this was in the BI review, somehow edited out, but what should have been there, either at the beginning or the end, is that yes, she's on REACT, but the opinions expressed here are not representative of ETAC, unless she had had a vote to allow her to present this in the newspaper, which I know I did when I was on ETAC. I wrote something to the BI review, which I had approved by the committee before sending it off. So I think that step was missing, and I think that step is critical because it gives the false impression, in my opinion, that this represents REACT as an entire committee and not just the personal opinion of one member. Thank you.
Thank you, Charlie.
Good evening, Council. Ron Peltier. I'm not comfortable right now, but I'm here because I think it's important for us to speak our truth and to support council members when they do the right thing. And Laura, I support the fact that you didn't vote to confirm Caitlin Lombardi last week. I appreciate that. When you did that, you probably knowingly put yourself in the crosshairs of REACT and their supporters. And you've been criticized tonight, but I thank you. And I know a lot of people support what you did. I've heard a lot about opinions, and we all have a right to express our opinions. I believe in the First Amendment. This op-ed by Caitlin Lombardi is not just opinions. It's a personal attack on an elected official. And Caitlin Lombardi is a fellow city official, and we have a little higher standard than just anything you want to say for city officials. And I think that if you expect to be reappointed to an advisory committee, there are certain standards that you need to uphold, and she did not. Her op-ed is full of innuendo, insults. She claims she didn't call Councilmember Nelson a racist. She didn't say racist, but if you read her op-ed, that's what she's trying to get across to you. So, and there's stuff that's just not true in this op-ed. She claims that people were duped and that Mike Nelson has emerged as some kind of MAGA shill. What a bunch of bullshit. I mean, really, that is just low. I've watched Mike campaign, and he told us what he was about, and that's what he's done as a council member. The people that voted for him are really happy with Mike. Tonight, you're not seeing a cross-section of Bainbridge Island voters. You're seeing an organized comment from people that plan to be here. So what's this all about? This is about a committee REACT at the city who feels threatened, feels that their statutory authority, their jealously held statutory authority is being threatened by council members that dare speak up. I want to thank you, Mike. I want to thank you, Laura. And I hope that Caitlin is not approved tonight for another term on REACT. Let's see, I got a little time left. What else do I want to talk about? So I heard a number of things about being cozy and comfortable. I don't believe in that. I'd rather not be here. I'd rather be home, thinning apples or something. First Amendment right, I believe in that, but personal attacks, city officials should not be launching personal attacks against each other. There's a higher standard for you guys. What else I got here? I already said that. So I've heard that Caitlin has been accused of being divisive. I think REACT is divisive, to tell you the truth. All this identity politics, dividing people into races. If you're white, you've got to prove you're not a racist. I'm really sick of it. What else? Oh, we keep hearing about the growth advocates that if we just upzone Bainbridge Island, we're going to have all this affordable housing. It's not true. Thanks for listening. Have a great meeting.
Ron, next, please.
Hello, Mayor, Acting City Manager, and council members. My name is Dennis Golick. I'd like to share a simple quote about the legacy of Washington's civility while voicing an opinion. The philosophy of civility deeply mirrors the legacy of an iconic Washington leader like the late Governor Dan Evans. He was famous for his absolute refusal to engage in disparaging comments about others. Evans frequently was associated and advocated for service with civility, believing that you could fiercely debate policy ideas during the day without ever attacking a colleague's character. Something for us to remember. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, please.
Lisa Neal, I live on Bainbridge Island. I unfortunately had to rewrite all my comments after listening tonight, but I'm going to start with please vote no on reappointment of Caitlin Lombardi. Tonight, you've heard a doubling down on what is in the op-ed. Mike Nelson's MAGA, everyone who voted for him is MAGA. Anyone who wants a small town feel is a racist. Just read the op-ed. It's been extremely divisive, and that's not an equity lens. At least as far as I've read it in looking at the equity lens. The equity lens is not let's attack people to make an argument. I mean, that's like the Charlie Kirk method of discussing things. So it can't be escaped that this op-ed and many others have continued to try to blow up the community. Working to divide us is wholly contrary to the stated goal of the Race Equity Advisory Committee. So if you do listen to the community, you'll hear that REAC has been damaged by this. People now are calling for a dismantling of REAC. That's not what, I don't think that was Lombardi's purpose, but that's what she does. So please appoint someone who has a goal of equity and inclusion, not exclusion and derision of her neighbors. And I'm going to have to take some of my time to school everybody on the First Amendment. Lathis v. City of Huntington Beach, that's a Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals case from 2023. And the reason I'm bringing that up is that's the case that torpedoed my civil rights case when Sarah Blossom had me kicked off a citizen committee for raising conflicts of interest issues. And I unearthed evidence that I was kicked off because the person who had the conflict of interest wanted to upzone the area and blah, blah, blah. And I said, hey, I have a right to bring that up. And the court said, no, you don't. You're on a citizen committee. If the council doesn't agree with you or doesn't like how you're saying something, even if they agree with you, you can be removed. And there's no First Amendment right implication whatsoever. So no, someone on a citizen committee does not have the right to go out there and attack council members, call them MAGA, do that sort of thing without repercussion. It's up to you to decide, is that the message you want to send? Is that anyone who in this city that believes that we should keep a small town feel or not grow too much, we're transformed into MAGA. I mean, you heard it again tonight. It's like a ruse that we want that. We really just don't want, I guess, poor people or other people or I don't know. So that used up almost all my time. I've got one short thing. If you look at page 6 of the land capacity analysis for 2026-05, you're going to see that it creates density almost twice what we agreed to. And it only creates 30 more units of affordable housing. That's not what we're about. That's market rate upzoning. That's for the wealthy. That's for people to park their money. That, and I appreciate the people who want affordable housing. And it makes me sad that they're bamboozled into advocating for market rate housing. Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. Next person, please. And please keep your comments at 3 minutes.
Good evening, City Council. I'm Chastity Malatesta, and I live in Meadowmere with my 3 sons as usual. I want to first of all thank you and thank Lisa Neal and Ron Peltier and several of those people who are bringing up the counter argument for what I brought up to the diocese several weeks ago when I said, it looks like you want to cancel REACT. And I really meant that. My correspondence, however, with Mike Nelson and Laura Lant was really positive, and I really appreciate you both writing me back and letting me know your questions and the questions that you had, Laura, and why you voted the way you did. One of the things you brought out that I thought was so wonderful was you said you didn't know the boundaries, the expectations, some of the things about the council, correct? And Mr. Nelson and Laura Lant are new council members who don't need to campaign anymore because you already won. Need to know that you haven't had the government alliance training. There's some things that you haven't had just because of the time in office. Doesn't make you good or bad, but it makes you unaware. And I think for you to come and make a decision in regard to a volunteer, but hold yourself to a different expectation. Mike Nelson, you are totally celebrated online for being bold, brash, and asking the city hard-ass questions. You kind of got the manosphere fired up on the island. And some of those men do represent our part of the magosphere. Some of them are part of our religious community, and some of them are liberal. You've gotten a lot of inquiry because of your brash ability to ask the city questions and hold them accountable. So it strikes me as a little bit odd, because I don't believe that you're that fragile, that a consideration and someone on your own committee holding the city accountable to the principles that one of the folks here already pointed out on the wall, why that would be so concerning. The one thing Lisa Neal and Ron Peltier and several people have done is they brought attention to REACT in a way that those of us on the founding committee of REACT could never do. You've asked some really good questions, and I'm applauding you, because as an African American on this island who talks about equity, I don't even get that much attention. So one, thank you, because what you brought up for the whole city is that we can ask these hard questions. But if you're willing to ask hard questions and hold the city accountable, then our committees and our citizens should be able to do the same. Love the constitutional law, had to totally Google it for dummies because I'm a teacher. And I understood that those same rights still apply to city council people as they do to our laymen and all of our volunteers. She's done a hell of a job, and she hasn't done anything wrong. If you set this precedent, you're going to be known as having that accountability back at you. And need to think about how comfortable those kind of questions are. You ask uncomfortable questions all the time up there, Mr. Nelson. If you're really going to hold someone else accountable to the truth and to what matters, then you got to get a thicker skin. Y'all got to get some training, some thicker skin, and understand that our community loves the city. We love Lisa Neal. We love Ron Peltier. He'd been talking about trees for years. I think he thinks he's still mayor, but you need to know that people are not going to stop coming. In fact, you're probably going to get double, triple the attention because of this. And I don't want it to be negative, but what I'm telling you is that we are a community. We community gossip, we community talk about you, we community get together, and you brought people together, and this isn't going to go away. So you either, one, figure out a way for you to get that training, two, understand that we get to ask hard questions, and I'm sorry people's feelings got hurt, for real. But guess what? In community and in coalition and mutual aid, somebody's going to get hurt. 9 times out of 10, it's on the marginalized backs of those that have less than. So we can do better. Thank you.
Thank you, Chaz. Next, please. Thank you for keeping the applause in your heart.
Hi, my name is Bobby Steffen. I was recently appointed to the REAC last week, and I actually didn't plan on speaking today, so sorry for the shaky voice and quick notes. I just wanted to comment that as a member, some of the things that I heard last week was worrisome. I am worried that REAC members are to do, what I heard was that REAC members are to do what council has directed rather than to advise the council based on our roles as committee members. I'm hoping that I heard wrong, and I hope that this council takes seriously the decision to reappoint Caitlin Lombardi, a beloved member of this community and committee, rather than opposing a member that is brave enough to voice disagreement to someone who is in a position of power. Yeah, I just wanted to voice that, and I appreciate all that you do, and I'm excited to serve. Thank you.
Thank you. I hope I caught your name. Did you say that at the beginning? Did I miss it?
Thank you. Bobby Steffen.
Thank you, Bobby.
Bobby, thanks.
Next person, please. And keep your comments at 3 minutes. Anybody else wish to do that? Okay, we have two two people listed online. One of them was in person here, so I'm knocking off Kisa's name. She's already spoken. So online, we have Jody and Yearly ready to speak.
Hi, my name is, I'm a local author and active in Seattle's arts, culture, and literary scene that many Bainbridge Islanders enjoy. I've been a Washington State resident for over 11 years in the Wallingford neighborhood of King County. Like many Seattleites, Bainbridge is part of my community. I visit often and I bring family and friends. I have considered moving to Bainbridge many times over the years, but I haven't because of its lack of racial diversity and what I have experienced as a polite, unwelcoming attitude towards racial difference. I'm speaking today in support of Caitlin Lombardi's reappointment to REACT. Caitlin and I met about 7 years ago at work. Although she's now a dear friend of mine, I'm here to speak to her work as her former manager. Caitlin joining my team made my work easier because of her brilliance. I watched Caitlin in meetings ask hard questions, making sure that the work we did on our team was grounded in equity across all dimensions. Caitlin's competence, passion, and dedication to equity again not only made my job as her manager easier, but our equity work more effective. This is because Caitlin sees herself as more than an ally to other communities. She understands that her freedom, her opportunities, her day-to-day quality of life is inextricably linked to practices and institutions that blatantly target and or politely ignore people who do not look like her. She understands that she too is harmed by inequity, and that sensibility is what equity work is all about. I'm actually a little jealous of Bainbridge Island to have Caitlin, not only because of her brilliance and work ethic, but the fact that Caitlin has been raised on the island since she was 3 years old. It speaks to her passion for making Bainbridge a diverse, equitable community to raise her 3 young daughters. I also watched the June 23rd City Council business meeting, and I find it curious that council members who do not liaise with LEAC have so many concerns about how Caitlin's public commentary would make race equity work. Again, this is not work that the council member is a part of, harder. And it seems to me that losing someone like Caitlin would make that committee work harder. Caitlin's right as a private person to make public commentary should not only be acknowledged, but respected. And I'd hope it would also be praised and modeled. I am here today because of Caitlin's public writing about efforts to block affordable housing on Bainbridge. I have never made public comment before, and isn't this what democracy is all about? I am sure for some council members, their work might feel easier if Caitlin shuts up. It might feel easier if people are not paying attention, but attention is not the same as division. Attention is engagement, and engagement is uncomfortable. Isn't an engaged public what democracy is all about? I encourage the council members who oppose Caitlin's reappointment to not use their free speech to curtail someone else's, especially someone like Caitlin, whose private and public work is consistent with the Race Committee's directives to build awareness and racism. City council meetings start with a land acknowledgement, and I hope that council members who oppose Caitlin's reappointment do not think people of color only exist in the past. This kind of acknowledgement is also a recognition of the debt Bainbridge Island owes to a people, to community, and to the ideals of equity and justice. I cannot imagine that council members who feel dignified and just in their work are comfortable being on public record to stand against these ideals by standing against Caitlin's reappointment.
Thank you, Jody Ann. City Clerk, is there any other persons online who wish to speak?
No, there's not.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you for everyone's comments, and we'll close public comment. Now we move on to consent agenda item number 4. Council, I look for a motion to adopt the consent agenda. Councilor Nelson.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to pull items 4C, E, F, and G.
C, D, and
no, C, E, F, and G.
C, D, F, and G. So Councilmember Nelson has moved to approve the agenda with the removal of items C, E, F, and G. Is that correct?
I didn't make a motion. I just pulled them. Yes.
Would you like to make that motion?
Yeah, I move to approve the consent agenda as modified.
There's a second to this motion.
Second.
All in favor, please. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And 2 abstentions? Oh, okay. I'm just trying to pay attention here, no worries. Okay. And that's, so the vote is 6 ayes as amended, and the chair votes aye, 7-0. Okay, so let's move quickly to the items that have been approved consent agenda. Item 4C, review and approve revisions to the water resources element of the comprehensive plan. Yes, Councilor Nelson?
Yeah, I have a motion to make. I wanted to move to add, quote, as an EPA designated sole source aquifer at the beginning of the first sentence under water resources introduction on page WR2.
Councilor Nelson has made, and it's been seconded. Discussion?
Yeah, I'll speak to it briefly, which is, it's just adding that at the very introduction. So the sentence would read, as an EPA designated sole source aquifer, Bainbridge Island is solely dependent on groundwater for its drinking water and requires a holistic perspective to understand the interdependence among the island's 3 primary water resources: groundwater, surface water, and stormwater.
Further discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We have 1, 2, 5 yay, 1 nay. Chair votes yay, so it is 6-1 with Councilmember Franklin Johnson dissenting.
Council members, may I please request that you raise your hands very high, so Christine and I can count the votes. Thank you.
All right. So.
Okay, so
I would ask the motion maker then, would you make the motion to review and approve the water resources element as is, as amended? Thank you.
Okay, so I move to approve the revisions of the water resources element of the comprehensive plan for inclusion in the public hearing draft of the comprehensive plan update.
So move, is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Councilmember Matthews, moving by Councilmember Nelson and seconded by Councilmember Matthews to move forward the water resources element of the comprehensive plan. Any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye. All
opposed? Councilman said 6. Thank you for having your hands up, council members. And the chair votes aye. It is 7-0. Moving to item 4E, review and approve revisions to the capital facilities element of the comprehensive plan. Councilmember Nelson? Your light.
Thank you. Sorry. I just had one question about this, which is, I know we had talked about sort of a sewer capacity analysis table. I'm not seeing that in this draft. And so I'm wondering if the interim city manager has any sort of update on that and whether it's appropriate to push this back to a later meeting once we have that information.
We do indeed have that information available. It confirms, and I'm sorry, I haven't sent it to you yet. We have been rather busy getting a number of items ready for you. I can reiterate that it substantiates that we do indeed have the information the capacity that is required on both water and sewer as described in the memos. The table can be sent to you, and I think it will confirm that the math that we've done shows that we have the capacity that we need for the population we're planning for over the 20-year period.
Deputy Mayor Hytopoulos?
I actually have a motion too, but I will respond to that to say that there are so many moving parts to that analysis that it's hard to, without seeing it, be able to make an opinion on that, because I'm assuming that what's being said is that based on the algorithm that's being used for what will actually be built, that we have capacity for that, but we do not have capacity for beyond that. And that is the critical thing that some of us have been talking about from the beginning, is that, again, there's an amount, there's units being zoned for, there's an effort to determine what will actually happen in this 20-year cycle. That actually goes to my motion when I have an opportunity to make it, which I will do.
I'll give you
So I had asked to have some language put in by staff, which I appreciate was added to the capital facilities element on page CF 12. And that is a paragraph that describes the state of the sewer plant, the fact that we need a couple of upgrades, that there are a couple of upgrades left that can be done. And I think the one thing that concerns me, I'm still going to be concerned when I see the data that we're waiting for, I know, but with what we have in front of us, what concerns me is that The last line states, planning for the second upgrade will follow in the next decade, informed by monitoring of the plant's loading as residential and commercial connections expand. I find that not very reassuring. I will say that the language that I had, and granted, I had said, hey, let staff do whatever they can to approximate what I'd asked for. I had said this capital facilities element will be reassessed if monitoring indicates that actual growth or loading patterns require acceleration of the second upgrade, or if projected funding sources prove inadequate to meet identified needs. I would move to replace that last sentence with what I stated. It makes me feel at least a little better that we're contemplating the fact that we may be incorrect in what we're assuming, and the fact that we are even talking about in the next decade. And for the public's understanding, this is the concern. I mean, the concern is there is only so much this plant will ever be able to do. And we have been told at times on this dais, don't worry about outzoning the plant, because sometime in the next 15 years, we'll start planning for a sewer plant. And planning, designing, permitting, et cetera, a sewer plant on Puget Sound is an incredible undertaking that will cost us a huge amount of money. And so this lack of planning is a big concern to me.
So there was a motion?
Yeah, my motion was to replace the words planning for the second upgrade will follow in the next decade, informed by monitoring of the plant's loading as residential and commercial connections expand. And I would like to replace that with this capital facilities element will be reassessed if monitoring indicates that actual growth or loading patterns require an acceleration of the second upgrade, or if projected funding sources prove inadequate to meet identified needs.
Second.
So the motion is on the floor with the language stated by the Deputy Mayor, seconded by Councilmember Nelson. Discussion by Council. Councilmember Scheider. And then, Councilmember Fowler Johnson was first, then Councilmember Scheider. Sorry.
So, okay, so what we're saying is that in 10 years, we may have to have a new sewer, right? And well, I'm gonna ask her this question because I'm trying to understand. And not only that, we plan on building a new sewer, but you wanted to plainly state that not only are we building a sewer, but if we have to, a plant, but if we have to accelerate that.
Deputy Mayor.
I'd like you to
Just explain that.
So there's two different issues. One is building the current plant out to capacity. That's something that we know we could do if we can get the funding. We're not concerned about that, but this speaks to the timing of the expansion of that. Second issue is actually realizing we need another plant and getting the design, locating, and all those things, like I said, started, which we are not anticipating it here. That's a second concern I have. So all I'm trying to do, it only partially addresses my overall concerns, but it at least anticipates that, again, given that we don't really know how fast development will happen. And as I've said before, that we've been saying, everybody's saying the goal is to get the development to actually happen, right? So if it happens at a great rate, then we may need to be looking at this a lot sooner. And the reference to a decade, I'm not saying it says that we won't start for a decade, but suggests that we aren't actively monitoring as the growth happens.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I think we have the gist of it. Councilmember Scheider.
Yeah, I think I'm asking a very similar question. I'm going to assume that I'm supporting this. I just want to make sure that I understand it. So could you just read again basically what I think you're saying is that you want to be sure that it's in the comp plan, that we are actively monitoring any potential accelerated need for something else, whether it's the next version of our current sewer capacity or whether we're going to need a new one. Is that true?
So wait, and Councilmember Matthews may also have a question, so I don't want to keep going back and forth. So Councilmember Matthews.
Which section is this in?
Okay. So Deputy
So
Mayor.
this is in the capital facilities element, in the main element, not in the subsidiary documents, CF 12. It's highlighted because it was a new paragraph that was added upon request. And
Perfect. This is what.
this will be really helpful,
Ben,
yes.
thank you, Ben. Okay, this was all I wanted to read.
So as you can see, above what I asked to remove, it says the second capacity project is estimated to cost in today's dollars, 12 to 15 million. That's just an expansion of this plant. That's not a new plant. So what I'm asking to remove is this reference, planning for the second upgrade will follow in the next decade, informed by monitoring of the plant's loading as residential and commercial connections expand. With, sorry, I've got the wrong thing open. This capital facilities element will be reassessed if monitoring indicates that actual growth or loading patterns require acceleration of the second upgrade, or if projected funding sources prove inadequate to meet identified needs. And I'd like to just add one more thing for the public's sake, Mayor, if you just give me a second. I mean, just again, what people need to understand, what the numbers we're looking at is the total numbers in the vicinity of 2,000 for all units of residential or commercial. And so it is extremely tight because we are absolutely, which is again, if we can get this grid we asked for, we are zoning for far more units than that.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Any further discussion? I think it's.
Can I, my
Councilmember Shasta,
question?
please.
Yeah, so Mayor, I think it's really helpful to have a little bit of back and forth because I sort of feel like, you know, it gets lost otherwise.
I'm just trying to keep order, but thank you.
So I guess I'm just, maybe, I'm sure you probably answered it and all of that, but if you could.
You might have to ask it again.
I know, right? Okay, so looking at what's highlighted here, the second capacity project is estimated to cost 12 to 15 million. So second capacity is not a new plant. It's just what we need to move to next. Planning for the second upgrade will follow in the next decade, informed by monitoring of the plant's loading. What are you saying that is needed above and beyond this?
Deputy Mayor?
I'm looking for language that is more actively, it may seem subtle to you, but it more actively, we are going to continuously and actively monitor loading and development to be sure we don't have to accelerate that. I'm open to any other language along those lines, but I don't, again, I'm a bit triggered by the next decade issue because again, I think well before the next decade, we will need to start planning the next plant. And this is just the second upgrade.
Yeah, Councilmember Shire.
So if you could just reread your statement again, please.
Yeah, and I'm sorry, it's not perfectly married to this because it came from my previous motion, but this capital facilities element will be reassessed if monitoring indicates that actual growth or loading patterns require an acceleration of the second upgrade, or if projected funding sources prove inadequate to meet identified needs.
And Deputy Mayor, my understanding is that's the replacement of the last line in this highlighted section. Okay, thank you very much. Yeah, she did make a motion. I don't know if there was a second. Councilmember Nelson, it's okay, very good. All right, we continue discussion or do we vote? Okay. No further discussion. Call for the vote. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Council votes 6-0, chair votes aye, 7-0. Is this and then we need a motion for item 4E. One more, Councilmember Nelson.
Yeah. I move to direct the interim city manager and to direct staff to include the sewer capacity table in the capital facilities element and bring the element back to the city council at a future business meeting.
No second, we know the motion fails. 4E, we do need a motion to move this element forward.
So moved.
Councilmember Farley Johnson. Sorry, the monitor's in the way. Yeah. Sorry, Councilmember Nelson.
So moved.
Yeah, so you're moving to have revisions to the capital facilities element comprehensive family moving forward. Correct.
Second.
Thank you. So that motion has been moved as amended. I would understand.
Yeah, as amended.
Thank you. Any further discussion, Councilmember Deputy Mayor Hytopoulos, then Councilmember Nelson.
I'm going to have to abstain for now on this one, even with the amendment, just because I would like to see the data table that we requested in order to be able to speak to that.
Councilmember Nelson?
Yeah, I'm gonna vote against this because I really the table is pretty critical to this element. It's kind of the core of the element. And so without it, I see this as incomplete. So I will be voting against it.
Councilmember Farrell Johnson? Okay. Any further discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor of the motion, please say aye. All opposed?
Nay?
We have, and then we have 3 yeas and 3 nays. The chair votes aye. The nay votes were Councilmember Land, Councilmember Nelson, and Deputy Mayor Hightopoulos. Abstaining, pardon me. Sorry that. I stand corrected. 2 noes from Councilmember Land and Nelson, and an abstention from the Deputy Mayor. Okay, speaking to item 4F, review and approve revisions of the land use element of the comprehensive plan. Councilmember Nelson, you pulled this.
Okay, well, unless there's any motions on this, I move to approve the revisions of the land use element of the comprehensive plan for inclusion in the final public hearing draft on the comprehensive plan update.
Is there a second?
Second.
Councilmember Franklin Johnson. Councilmember Nelson moved and Councilmember Franklin Johnson second to move forward revisions of the land use element of the comprehensive plan. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye. All those opposed?
Nay.
So we have 5 yeas. Wait, 1, 2, 3, 5 yeas and 1 nay. The chair votes aye. Then the lone nay was Councilmember Nelson. And now to item 4G, review and approve revisions to the housing element of the comprehensive plan. Councilmember Nelson, you had pulled this, or Councilmember Land.
Yes, thank you. On page HO12, this is goal housing 2. I'd like to, my intent is that the current policy HO 2.1 says what I want it to say, but then there's more that I want to add. So I think I'm going to create a second policy, and that policy surrounds policies to reduce the risk of displacement of existing low to moderate income households. I move to consider limiting rent increases to consider policies such as limiting rent increases for month-to-month rental agreements as allowed by state law, similar to regulations enacted by the city of Seattle.
It's been moved by Councilmember Land. Is there a second?
I had a request to repeat. Should I repeat that one more time if it wasn't clear?
Sure.
You got it? Okay. To reduce the risk of displacement of existing low to moderate income households, I move to consider policies such as limiting rent increases for month-to-month rental agreements as allowed by state law, similar to regulations enacted by the city of Seattle.
Second.
Moved by Councilmember Land and seconded by Councilmember Nelson to enact a new policy as articulated by Councilmember Land. Is there a dedication of what that policy number should be?
HO 2.5.
Thank you very much. Any discussion? Councilmember Scheider, then Councilmember Franklin Johnson.
I'm not totally opposed to it, but I just feel that there needs to be quite a bit more conversation about it. So I don't know that I can vote for it at this time. I don't know that as a group, there's enough information having been processed to know that this should be a goal.
Councilmember Franklin Johnson, then Councilmember Nelson.
Yeah, I think Councilmember Snyder just said exactly what I was going to say. I need more information to make sure that this is doable. And it's just been like kind of sprung on us. So I don't have enough information to.
Councilmember Nelson, then Councilmember Land, and Deputy Mayor Hightopoulos.
Yeah, I absolutely support this. I mean, this is saying, let's not allow massive rent increases. I mean, as somebody who's rented most of my life, I think that this is a pretty significant burden on people when rent is increased. And so, yeah, it's good policy. I'm supportive.
Councilmember Land.
All right, and my explanation of this is that the same meeting that the upzoning was approved suddenly sprung upon us, as one might say. We also listened to a cadre of citizens who live at the Key Apartments, and all those folks are on month-to-month rental agreements, some of them for more than 20 years at month-to-month. So They are anticipating a hike across the board, probably sometime in August. If we have a policy in place, not specifically for this apartment complex, but for the ones that are coming up in the future and the ones that are doing month to month right now, we can limit the percentage. State law now allows something close to 10% increase if you're on an annual a lease. But if you don't have the opportunity to be on an annual lease and you're month to month, you could get big jumps in your rent faster and more than you would on an annual basis. So this would put some kind of a measure in place that would put a capacity on month to month agreements only.
Deputy Mayor Toplis, then Councilmember wait, I think her light was on first, then Councilmember Matthews, and then Councilmember Brownlee Johnson.
I mean, this just seems like a no-brainer to me. I was a little thrown by the acronym thinking like, is this something I don't understand? But this feels like something that I don't have time to look it up, whether it was in our original, housing, the results of the housing task force years ago. I would hope it's in our housing action plan. I mean, what is possibly bad about this? It doesn't require any particular policy to execute it. It recognizes that there is naturally occurring affordable housing. I myself benefited from that as a newly divorced mom years ago, and have been was greatly appreciated for that. So I think it's a really good policy, and I will vote for it.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Councilmember Matthews, then Councilmember Brownlee Johnson.
Thanks, Mayor. So I spent many years as a renter and Breton on the island as well. And so this is actually a really interesting motion, and I would love for us to discuss this further and really go figure out ways to make this something that can happen for the key folks. I would like to make a distinction between large corporations or corporations who run, or developers, key, and then mom and pop, single family or rental in a home. I think there is a difference. And I also think that this is an opportunity to probably hear from those folks before we do this. So hear from renters and rentees and hear a little bit from them. There could be some things that we are not thinking about. So I support this for sure, but I do not support this now without engaging them and without a distinction between like a single family, mom and pop, sort of, I'm not thinking the right word right now, but not a corporation as a landlord, like the key situation, and figuring out another way that we can help them that's not this comp plan.
Thank you, Councilmember Matthews. Councilmember Brownlee Johnson.
Yeah, I think that maybe this should be more of a goal than a policy. There's no way we can measure this as a policy. Consider doing it is the way the motion read. How do we measure whether or not that's being done? We're not the ones in charge of what the rents are, so I like it as a goal more than a policy. So I can't support it.
Thank you, Councilmember Brownlee Johnson. Deputy Mayor Hytopoulos, then Councilmember Scheider.
I think an essential part of good housing policy is going to be tracking our inventory and understanding what we have in the way of all types of housing, whether it's that wow, if tracking what going rates are with mom and pops in their extra home or their ADU, all the way through corporations. And that, I think, that's just an understood thing that we're going to be doing. So it just doesn't seem like it's asking anything of anybody other than us to track the supply and for us to develop strategies to maintain long-term affordability. There's nothing here that requires us to do any particular thing that anybody could find offensive.
Councilmember Scheider, then Councilmember Nelson.
Thank you. So I also think that I would love to support this, and I'm concerned about not differentiating between, multiple units by the same owner versus potentially just a single homeowner. What I leases kind of turn into month to month without much oversight, without much thinking about it. It just sort of randomly rolls over. So this will cause an awful lot of more scrutiny about letting leases roll over to month. And maybe there's some sort of a reverse incentive for landlords to say, oh, well, this is going to be my only opportunity to raise the rent, so I better do it quickly before. I don't know. I mean, I'm not saying that that's going to be true. I just don't want to have some unintended consequences.
Councilor Nelson?
Yeah, I just point out that this is a policy where you say, consider doing this, and then this is something that we as a council would follow up on, right? So we would study the issue, we'd have some sort of ordinance. So putting this in the comp plan says, hey, let's look at this because this is an interesting idea, right? So I support it. I just don't think that, yeah, I don't agree with my colleagues saying that this shouldn't be in here.
Councilor Hatopoulos, then Councilmember Lamb?
I don't think there's anything in here that speaks to anything with regards to month lease. I mean, I know that the Councilor Lant threw out the month aspect of the key issue, but this could be other incentives for mom and pop, landlords to keep places affordable. I mean, it could be anything, right? This is a statement of value, of us having a value of being committed to trying to find ways to keep things that are already affordable. Nothing here says anything about changing terms of leases or anything. It's simply saying that we will look for any policies we can to maintain existing affordability. I mean, I don't know if someone can argue to me it says something other than that. I don't see it.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Hatopoulos, Councilmember Lamb, and Councilmember Franklin Johnson.
Thank you. So number one, I'd like to just again say this is like a piggyback on policy HO 2.1, where it says we're already tracking the supply of regulated and naturally occurring affordable housing. So the policy is already in place to track and to track the supply. What I'd like to do is offer an amendment to the motion to include multifamily housing only. So that would be my amended motion is to consider policies for limiting rent increases for month-to-month rental agreements as allowed by state law, similar to regulations enacted by the city of Seattle for multifamily unit housing.
Second.
Okay. Okay, that amendment from the motion maker to simply add multifamily, non-defined, 10 units, 5 units, I don't know what that means. Councilmember Scheider, Councilmember Scheider.
I think I can support that.
So now we have an amended motion. Would you please restate the motion as amended?
Okay.
Because that was like 2 hours ago, so.
All right, here we go. To reduce the risk of displacement of existing low to moderate income households, I move to consider policies limiting rent increases for month-to-month rental agreements as allowed by state law, similar to regulations enacted by the city of Seattle for multifamily units.
And that has already been seconded by Councilmember Nelson. Deputy Mayor Hatopoulos.
I feel like a complete idiot. I'm sorry, I had a complete brain something. I mean, I'm looking at this. We've done so much of this, looking at this. I'm thinking we're talking about the language in front of us, and this is what's already in there. Okay. So I actually, after all my statements, which were about what is the problem with this thing, this is probably a great way to go, and I think we should talk about it, but I'm not comfortable adding to the comprehensive plan something that's specific without discussion. I'm sorry. I mean, I probably support it, but hey, I support increase the minimum wage too, but I'm not going to throw it in here right now. So I'm very sorry for wasting everyone's time arguing about an existing revision.
Deputy Mayor wouldn't say it was a waste of time. Thank you for your contributions. Any further, Councilmember Matthews?
I'm sorry to add to some work. I know that we're going over. I really agree with this, and I love the multifamily amendment. I just really think that this is a conversation that we should have with the parties if there was a way. But if the majority I don't know. I'm really conflicted on this one.
And thank you, Councilman Matthews. Any further discussion? Well, I'll just close it up because I usually let you guys talk first. I believe I'm the only renter up here, I think. So I have a little skin in the game on this. And thank you, Councilman Matthews, for recognizing individuals like myself, because I think this would be a discussion that we need to have a community conversation on and bring all these parties in. And the policies, I think you identified there are people who are renting out their daylight basements. That's month to month. So we kind of had that multifamily. What is multifamily? Is it a triplex? What? I mean, the definition is fluid. The intent, Councilmember Land, is right to my heart, and thank you for thinking of people like me. But I just think, agreed, this is something that we really need to have a little more in-depth conversation with our community and not put it in the comp plan as it has been proposed. That would be my feeling. So no further discussion. All in favor of that motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Okay. So we have 4 yeas and nays? 2 nays?
Yeah, consider.
You consider? One of that? Wait, the count keeps moving. Now are we at 5, 6? Yeah. We have 5 A's. Okay. All right. Okay. And you're a nay, and I am a nay as well. So the vote is 5-2 with Councilmember Franklin Johnson and myself voting nay. Thank you. So do we have a motion for this amendment now? Land use element? Land use element? Anyone? Housing element? 4 is 4G, I believe.
We have to do the motion now, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so as amended, approve revisions to the housing element of the comprehensive plan for inclusion in the final public hearing draft of the comprehensive plan update.
Second.
So moved by Councilmember Franklin Johnson, seconded by Councilmember Schreider to move forward the revisions of the housing element of the comprehensive plan. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Council vote 6-0. Council vote of 5 yeas and 1 nay. Right. Okay. And the chair votes aye, so it is 6-1, and the no vote is Councilmember Nelson. So we have gotten through the consent agenda. Now we move to item number 5, city manager report.
Good evening, Council. Thank you for that work on the comprehensive plan. I think we are really making significant progress, and I'm glad to see that, and also happy to support further analysis as we go. I will ask if you do have motions that you have written down, if you can send those to the clerk. So helpful to us because we are listening hard, but your typing is also great for us to have. The only other item I have today is I would like to introduce our interim planning director. Emily Terrell has joined us. So she started all the way back on the 1st of June and is first joining us tonight. Just to have a quick introduction with Emily, and then you'll see a lot more of her later in the day. Glad to have her and her expertise on our team.
Would you like me to say anything now or later?
Maybe just a short introduction and
Okay, very short. I'm new to you, but I've been watching the council meetings for the entire month, as well as the planning commission and steering committee meetings too. So I have a little bit of a sense. I am primarily a planning consultant and hearing examiner. I have been a planner in Washington for 25 years and a hearing examiner for 20. I believe the reason I might have been chosen for this position is because I wrote 4 comp plans in the last 2 years and all of the development code that went with them, and have worked through the Department of Commerce, Fish and Wildlife, DNR, and everybody in between. So I hope that we can move this forward and get it done. The staff have put together a heroic effort, and we would like to get this over the goal line as much as you, maybe more. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, and welcome aboard. Any other reports from the city manager? Thank you very much. So let's move to regular business items. And I'd like to just do a time check on the council. Public comment went almost double the time we allotted, plus these extra discussions. So I just want to keep a check that we are at about 8 o'clock. And we have several business items to deal with tonight, so let's be cognizant of that time. Council item 6A, review and approve revisions to the Winslow Sub-Area Plan and ordinance number 2026-04. Interim Manager.
Thank you very much, Council. Ellen Schroer, Interim City Manager. This is the second review of the second review of the ordinance and the material, and we are requesting that you consider forwarding this for use as the basis of the public hearing draft in July of ordinance 2026-04 and the sub-area plan. The version that you see in the packet today is very much the same as before. We did update it based on the motions that you made. And we will continue to update this to add a summary and to finish up the dates and other important parts of the process. Another thing I'd like to draw your attention to is that in the month of July, we will issue a final environmental impact statement for this work. Darren Buchanan, our planning manager, is here if you have any questions that you'd like to ask. Otherwise, we will turn this over to you for further discussion. And if you have any questions, we're happy to take those.
Thank you, Deputy Interim City Manager, Councilmember Matthews, then Councilmember Nelson.
I was just going to make the motion unless we have, I move to direct staff to use the Winslow sub-area plan and ordinance number 20, am I on the right? Yep, 2026-04 as presented to prepare the public hearing draft.
There's been a motion, is there a second? It's moved by Councilmember Matthews, seconded by Councilmember Franklin Johnson to move revisions of sub-area plan for ordinance number 2026. Discussion. Councilmember Nelson?
Yeah, I mean, I had a question for Darren about the final draft environmental impact statement, which is, are we going to be issuing any sort of supplemental draft or revised draft or anything like that? Or are we going to use the original DEIS as sort of the basis for the final?
It's cool when it works.
Yeah. Darren Buchanan, Planning Manager. I don't believe that there will be doing a supplemental based off direction from legal. It's not needed essentially because from the DEIS. I will defer to Interim Director Emily if she has more that she wants to add to it. But
I think I can. The problem is I'm old and I can look at you or I can read.
Emily, can you try to speak into the microphone so that we can all hear you? Thank you.
Yes. Okay. So for the final EIS, there were alternatives, and then has been sort of whittled down to the final Winslow sub-area plan and the remainder of the comprehensive plan. So we know the alternative there that we're looking at. One of the first steps that we have to do, and we have largely done so, we're going to double check, is to address all public comments and agency comments that came in. Make sure that those were either addressed in the final documents by page number, or to explain why they were not and what their environmental impacts are and whether or not those can be or cannot be mitigated. The point of an EIS is that some impacts are not mitigatable as opposed to under a determination of non-significance that is mitigated, where we can say, and plant some extra plants, that kind of thing. Changing zoning doesn't really have the same setup in terms of impacts. We need to revise the documents if need be to provide findings and ordinance, but what we're really doing is just looking for the page numbers where we did do it. There are also from the files many public comments and the official responses to those comments. So we're going to put those into findings that are required and provide formal comment if we have not already done so, but I think we have. Then we need to submit it to the SEPA register and provide for formal issuance with agencies. But other than making reference to newer studies that have been done since then, groundwater management and mobility and those other things, we don't expect that we will be providing a supplemental other than to make clarification as to this is the alternative and this is how we've handled it and this is where we've handled it.
Councilor Nelson?
No, that's really helpful. And just the final question is just, since what we're doing is slightly different than the three alternatives that were studied, do you need to study sort of a alternative 4 and kind of do an analysis of that, or is the previous analysis of the 3 sufficient?
From what I'm understanding from staff, based on a process that I've not been here for, unfortunately, I think that what we have done is chosen the best alternative and then turned that into a Winslow sub-area plan. So I think what we need to make sure in our FEIS is we describe what those boundaries are, where we're talking about growth and where we're not and why. So it's more a matter of clarifying the scope and clarifying that we covered everything in the original DIS, and it looks like we largely have. We may end up, if we have to do a supplemental, it will be because we find a comment that we have not otherwise found. But from what I've just heard this month with the boundaries discussions and all of the permutations that go inside and outside of boundaries with utilities and all the other stuff, I think that we have probably covered everything in looking through the comments that I've seen that were part of the original DEIS process.
Just want to say thank you and welcome.
Thank you very much. You're going to see a lot more of me, and I hope you'll still thank me then. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for those questions, Councilmember Nelson. Any further discussion? All in favor of the motion by Councilmember Matthews and seconded by Councilmember Bentley Johnson to move, Councilmember Shatter. Deputy Mayor Hightower.
Just for the record, I have to say that there's been discussion, I've seen discussion on social media or whatever about who's voting for which of these, moving them forward and so forth. And I'm going to continue to move forward anything that I think is baked and ready to move forward to the final public hearing. It does not mean that I endorse the content of it. It doesn't mean that I may ultimately vote or not vote for the plan, but I think it's appropriate to move these forward when we've done what we can with them. So that's the basis for my vote.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Hightower. Any further discussion? I'll call for the question on that motion. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Nay.
5 yeas and 1 nay. The chair votes aye, 6-1, with Councilor Nelson voting not to move that forward. Regular business 7B, ordinance number 2026-05, adopting and implementing regulations for the updated comprehensive plan and window sub-area plan and review direction to be used in the land capacity analysis. Councilmember Nelson.
Okay, I move to revise base FAR, maximum FAR, lot coverage in table 18.12.020-3 to align them with the Planning Commission's recommendations.
Second.
Okay, and I'll speak to this briefly. What this would mean specifically is that the max FAR would stay the same. It would be 3.0 in core, 4.0 in ferry, 4.0 in high school. But this would mean that the base FAR would go down to 0.7 and 0.6 in ferry and high school as the Planning Commission recommended. And this would also mean, excuse me, that the lot coverage numbers would go back to what the Planning Commission recommended. And the Planning Commission recommended no changes. So it would go back to 75% in ferry instead of 100%, 50% high school instead of 75, and 35 in connection instead of 60. The February land capacity analysis, we're saying that's enough if we use these numbers here, but that actually didn't include the mandatory inclusionary zoning program, which should add more capacity. And the reason I'm making this motion is because, you know, Commissioner Dinez had emailed me and he told me to think deeply about this idea of the increased max FAR. And I told him I would think deeply about it. And I have been thinking deeply about it. And quite frankly, I continue to believe that the outcome I want is more affordable housing and not more market rate housing. And the market rate is what's coming from the base FAR. Whereas if we're increasing the max FAR, we're going to end up getting the higher utilization rate and get the affordable housing we expect. So that's my motion. I hope my colleagues will support it.
Thank you, Councilman Nelson. Deputy Mayor Hightower.
Well, I appreciate the effort to revise this, the code changes to do something different. I actually have more concern about the maximum FAR than I do the increase in base zoning. And in particular, since this council has decided to award FAR for all sorts of things besides affordable housing, I wouldn't have anywhere near, I could have ultimately adjusted my feelings about 3.0 FAR, for example, if I really believed it was going to be affordable. So I won't be able to support this motion. It doesn't resolve the issues for me.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Any further discussion? Councilmember Scheiderer.
So I don't know that my comments are going to be terribly useful because I have a lot of goals, but not a lot of specifics on how to get there. I would like to not be entirely giving away the extra base FAR. Understanding that Planning Commission wanted to do 0.7, I think. I guess I'm confused about where the mandatory inclusionary zoning comes in and are they connected? And I'm totally confused, so I'm going to vote against the recommended motion. And I wish I was better prepared, and I wish I better understood the many, many layers of what's gone through the hard work of the Planning Commission.
Thank you, Councilmember Scheiderer. Councilmember Nelson.
Yeah, and to my colleague, if you look at page 25 of Exhibit B, it shows the program, and it's for in the Winslow sub area. If it's a lot that's 2 acres or greater, it requires that 5% of the units be for 80% AMI and below, and it requires that 10% also be for middle income or middle housing basically between 80 and 120. It says less than 120, but you'll end up getting sort of 80 to 120, right? And so that is an amount of capacity that increased the capacity in subsequent land capacity analyses, but it wasn't included in the February one, right? And so I'm just making the point that this is another way that affordable housing is going to happen. The voluntary inclusionary zoning is going to have a higher utilization rate because of the higher FAR. And ultimately, you're not going to need to increase the base FAR like that to get to our numbers. And that's really what I keep pushing back on, is this market rate upzoning instead of focusing on the affordable housing piece. So, and also the lot coverage piece. I mean, the Planning Commission talked about this and they never recommended changing this. This was just an assumption that staff put in the February land capacity analysis. And so nobody has recommended changing that. And I just don't think that we should be changing that either. So that's my motion. I do hope my colleagues will support it, but I definitely understand if you won't. So
Thank you, Councilmember Nelson. Councilmember Matthews.
Thanks, Mayor. I won't be supporting this motion. I appreciate the intent. I think that what we are proposing here is not what has been the chatter and that sort of thing. It is not a pro-growth agenda. It's a pro-human and a pro-community plan. And I think that we still are, it's a very balanced approach. We're not doing the bare minimum, but we're not doing a lot of things that even in looking at HRB's email from today, this is still seen as really a start. So I think that I'm really proud of our council for doing really hard work.
Thank you, Councilmember Matthews. Councilmember Lamb.
Thank you. I am supporting this motion because I'm not a fan of going from 0 to 60 without public conversation in the middle. And I think that's what happened last time. And it really struck me as a bad way to do business. It really threw the public for a loop. It certainly threw me for a loop. So I am going to support this because this resets so much that the public has been expecting. And if public comment comes up during the hearing that says, let's do this, then let's talk about it then, but let's have a robust conversation. This conversation right now is 10 times longer than the conversation during the meeting when this took place, when this change up took place. So I am absolutely in support of it. And I think that the public would appreciate support so that they have a chance to weigh in as well.
Councilman Scheider.
So I've been staring at page 25 pretty much this whole meeting, trying to figure out, how the mandatory program fits in, right? And so what I've been told multiple times is that the way of triggering the mandatory is problematic. The fact that, first it was 3 acres, then it's 2 acres, but both of those don't really sort of come out in the math based on what LMN has subsequently told staff or planning commission or something or other. So I would hope that that we could clarify this mandatory affordable housing with triggers that are more like what other cities do. And I don't know that that has any relationship to what you're just offering right now. So I'm going to throw my hands up and back away.
Thank you, Councilmember Schneider and Councilmember Nelson.
Well, it's actually a question for staff, which is, and maybe Darren or Emily, is it Emily?
Yes, sir.
Okay, good. Sorry. Do you know the capacity that was created by the mandatory inclusionary zoning in either the May or the June land capacity analysis, the more recent ones that included them?
I personally do not know the answer to that. What I have, when we get to it, is a presentation where we ask for the same clarification that the council is asking for and discuss whether or not that makes sense to go back to the planning commission for clarification on those things and whether maybe this should be an overlay or something that is similar to the way other cities have done it. But it's when I show you the land capacity analysis as we have it and our understanding of the mandatory inclusionary zoning as we understand it, the very next slide is that what you want? And is this something that we need to do here or take back to the planning commission for a more robust analysis as part of what could be a code update or next year's comprehensive plan amendment cycle? So we're going to ask you that same question ourselves. What I have is a slide that presents what we think the FARs and other parameters are and where that information came from initially, but it does not include mandatory inclusionary zoning. Excuse me, it's late for me.
Thank you, Emily. The Deputy Interim Manager likes to speak.
Thank you, Council. I'm glad that you're so interested in having this conversation. You jumped in before I had a chance to say anything. So glad to know that everyone is really interested and engaged in this conversation. I know there's a motion on the table. With your, if you'd either like to postpone that or address that motion and then go forward, we do have a pretty detailed presentation prepared for you for this item. I'm sorry that it wasn't in the packet, but one of the really beneficial things about having Emily here with us as our interim planning director is that she has several decades of experience with exactly this, and she is prepared to sort of walk us through where we are with the comp plan and help you understand what's coming next. She's spent most of her first month here doing sort of an audit of where we are, what we have left to do, and I'd love to have her make that presentation when you're ready. We do have some slides for you, but right now there's a motion on the floor, so I'll turn it back to you for that. And then we'll step through that presentation. I will acknowledge on the front end that it is really wordy. There's a lot of slides. I will be emailing it to you. We'll post it to the website tomorrow so everyone has time to take a look at it. And if, as we chew through this, it really is too much for one night, we're happy to come back and have another conversation about either exactly the same slides or slightly amended ones as we go forward. But glad to have her here. I know we've all been kind of wanting a comprehensive look at like, where are we and where do we need to go? Sorry about the pun. A look at where are we trying to get, what do we have between our current and our end state? As Emily said, we are anxious to help this across the goal line. We need to take the required steps to get it there. And she'll be ready to talk to you about how we get from here to there.
Thank you. I didn't realize you were a punny person. Councilmember Nelson.
Mayor, could we table this motion until after the presentation? It seems like there might be some information that could be useful.
Thank you. A table motion is not debatable. So what we do is we vote when that stops conversation and moves forward. So all in favor of the table motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We have 1, 2, 3, 4 ayes and 2 nays. And the chair votes nay, so but the motion is tabled 4-3 with the abstentions of myself, Councilmember Matthews, and Councilmember Friendly Johnson. Right. Okay, moving on to item 6A, appoint a deputy mayor, and as a prerogative of the chair, I will make the motion I will move to appoint Deputy Mayor Hytopoulos to continue as Deputy Mayor from July 1st, 2026 through December 31st, 2026.
Second.
Oh, wait, we have to move the,
Wait,
we
point
have
of
to
order.
pardon me, you're right. We didn't move this ordinance forward. You're correct.
Wait, point of order.
Thank
The interim city manager and staff are going to give us a presentation.
Yeah, I believe what we did was just table the motion to change the FAR.
All right.
If I'm correctly
Yes.
understanding Councilmember Nelson, and so now we will have our presentation.
Thank you.
Now we
Thank
go.
you so much.
Yeah.
I was so close to running away. Okay. Thank you again, Council. Nice to see you. I have been given 20 minutes to provide you with 23 slides, but the last one just says thank you. So as the city administrator mentioned, I have spent most of my first month trying to get my head wrapped around where we are. And because I've done these a lot of times, I go back to first principles and make sure that we're meeting the scope of what we were required to do by the Department of Commerce and the various state agencies. So this will be an update to where 2026-05 is now and where we see it going and when. I'm hoping this works. Yay. Okay. So we have several date marks that we want to talk about. There was everything you'd seen prior to the 16th of this month. And then what we're talking about here tonight. And then there'll definitely be a third draft as we go through and catch some of the things that need to be brought up to speed. Specifically, if we're going to declare GMA compliance in our development regulations, we need to make sure that they are in fact compliant. And when we're making that declaration in 2026, we're talking about compliance in 2026, not 2023, when the original checklists were put together. So there will be some things that come before you that you have not seen yet. We will go through the Planning Commission first. One of the things that we'll start with is the Comprehensive Plan and Ordinance 04 and its adoption along with its FEIS are one thing, and we hope to set that public hearing and hold it. The implementation of that comprehensive plan are the development regulations, and that's what I want to talk about tonight. I want to walk you through what's in the ordinance as it was before June 16th or at the June 16th beginning of the meeting. I will be quick about that because I'm hoping that you've seen it. And then we'll talk about some of the motions. There is a request for clarification from us based on the discussion we just tabled, and then some updates due to state law. Like I said, I'm going to try and be quick about this, but as we run through it, the first thing are codes to implement the comprehensive plan itself and the Winslow Sub-Area Plan, and then our quest for you, and then the remaining issues that are coming up. So the overview of the code changes for this first draft that was presented to council at the beginning of the 6/16 meeting included the Winslow sub-area boundaries and other new zones, the connection zone, new zoning descriptions, affordable housing incentives, increases in lot coverage, and the other things that are required to implement the comprehensive plan, which are different than just random changes in state law that we are also responding to. Specifically, we've done a lot of changes in terminology updates throughout the code and provided for housing design demonstration project, language changes, adding certain things that were related as part of both state code and the comp plan, such as enabling additional residences in existing commercial buildings that can be converted. Again, this is all stuff that was in front of you earlier this month. We also acknowledge the new Winslow sub-area boundaries and specify the new micro-unit multifamily, which in Department of Commerce and legislative parlance is co-living. So one of the things that you will see is in addition to our definitions that make sure that those two things are equivalent within the code, what we call it and what the state wants it to be. We also have new zoning maps and a whole bunch of other changes that are specific to the code. So again, new zone descriptions, updating use regulations as they apply for the comprehensive plan itself. I'm going to skip some of these simply because don't have a whole lot of time. Here's a zoning map I hope you've seen before. And as the city administrator mentioned, this is a word-dense, big document. The idea today is to bring in the scope and timeline of where we plan to go forward. It is meant to be an overview. It's meant to be quick, and it's meant to come back to you for further discussion. We will send you home with this, and then you can really look at it and think about it. But for tonight, what we're trying to do is give a sense of where we are and where we're going. Okay. Other specific changes are, again, the co-living, development standards, parking standards, things that were related to implementing the comprehensive plan itself. Then we're moving into incorporation of city council requested motions from that 6/16 meeting with a clarification request of our own. That is sort of the second draft of Ordinance 2605 as we're trying to respond to council. The first draft was Planning Commission. The second draft is yours. So at the meeting, the council voted to return the land capacity analysis assumptions for the Winslow Town Center zone to those within the February 2026 Planning Commission recommendation. And we have provided those in a slide that gives you a where it is, what's changing, what the council asked us to change, what's in the current municipal code, and the source for that. And we want to make sure that these are the assumptions that you would like us to go forward with, and if not, what are those changes? If you don't mind me flipping through really quick. There's also the land capacity assumptions for maximum building height, which is unchanged since February of 2026, both in the June 16th direction, that's your direction from us, and then what is in the current BIMC. If these assumptions, and we'll talk about them, we can go back to that slide, are in fact correct, then the land capacity analysis presented to the Planning Commission in March 2026 was correct. It's complete and ready for inclusion in the Winslow Subarea Plan and within the code itself. However, in May of 2026, past the February version you asked us for, the Planning Commission recommended the council include mandatory inclusionary zoning keyed to either development scale or lot size. So for us, this is what we understand of the Planning Commission's recommendation from April 16th for Table 1812-030. Again, we can go back to this slide, but I wanted to give you a large overview of what we think we heard and assume nothing without the council telling us where you want us to be. So we have a request for clarification. We request that the council let us know whether or not we are including the mandatory inclusionary zoning in this new LCA, because the LCA we have now is based on the February assumptions. If we are including mandatory inclusionary zoning, that changes our assumptions. We have to go back to LMN. We expect it will take them at least a month to provide us with a document back. If they change significantly, we're going back to the Planning Commission. Everything takes a little bit longer. So the other option is, given that the potential scope of this impact and our the many different parameters that have come up, that instead maybe we consider bringing this back to the Planning Commission for work next year for further discussion, allow more public input on this. And again, this could be better as an overlay zone. I'm just from my personal experience in writing code, I want to make sure that we are providing exactly what you want and that it's had an opportunity for robust public debate. But I'm hoping that at the end of this, not just yet, but as soon as I'm done, that we can maybe pull that tabled motion back up and have a conversation about this so that staff has clarity and knows exactly what we're asking for from our consultant before we waste more precious time and also money in the process. Okay, I'm going to.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Yes, sir. Thank you. I want to then move on to the next portion of it. There are the updates that to the development code that must be done just to comply with the things that we put together in the future land use map, the sub-area plans, those kinds of things. And then there's all the other stuff, much of which has come up since the original checklists were done. So we want to make sure that the code complies with the legislative changes to the Growth Management Act as as an expanded third draft. So you'll see the first draft again with the changes that you provide us, and then these other things. These other things will have to go back through the Planning Commission. However, we have a timeline and a plan for that that is aggressive, but we think doable. Okay, there are many steps required for Growth Management Act consistency. And there are in fact about a zillion different checklists that we have been required to do from the beginning. These include the Department of Commerce's Growth Management Act updates, which are both to the comprehensive plan and to the development regulations. And many of them aren't related to the comprehensive plan. They're just related to changes in state law that the legislature has enacted over the last couple of years. So we're working on both of those. And my staff, a team of people on my staff, are going back through each of these checklists and noting where they are in the plan. And the point of that is to be able to give the Department of Commerce findings of facts that say, yes, indeed, we have met all of your requirements and it's on this page. And hopefully that will allow us to move through much more quickly. We also have to update our critical areas code, which involves a commerce checklist as well as a DFW checklist. The DFW checklist is newer. The commerce checklist we've gone through, and in fact, the critical areas code already complies with state law for everything they asked for from there. Where we might have a few updates are that the Department of Fish and Wildlife has created new tools that they like us to use, and they would like us to reference those new tools so that when we're asking applicants to provide us with information for critical areas reports or in support of land use permits, that we are using the most current available science and the best available science. So they're asking us to update references mostly. We want to make sure that we meet the Department of Commerce Housing Accountability Act checklist. I think we'd all agree that one's pretty important. And the Puget Sound Regional Council's comprehensive plan checklist. And also we have to comply with Kitsap County's countywide planning policies. So we're beholden to the state and the regional entity and the county, and only then may we decide our own fate. So we are going through each of these things. We have staff members on every single one of them now, and we are coming together to make sure that we've met everything. We're pretty good. We think on all these comprehensive plan policies and goals and the various elements. There will be some development code that comes up. Okay, so in order to declare consistency, we have to be consistent with now. Some things have changed. Based on the outcome, we will be bringing back updates to the various portions of the development code, which means the Planning Commission. We're going to limit these changes and the scope of the changes that we bring back to the Planning Commission to be specifically compliant with the GMA state law requirements. Nothing extra unless you ask us to include mandatory inclusionary zoning, then we'll add that. We will bring them to the Planning Commission recommendation and then to the City Council. So I know it would spring to my mind if somebody came and told me that was, and when will that be? Let's get to that. There's the comprehensive plan work schedule and then the adoption of the development regulations. They do not have to be concurrently. They can be in series. And in this case, I would recommend that we do put them in series. So for the comprehensive plan this month, we will issue that FEIS we just discussed. And we will also be putting together an ordinance related to SEPA that will come out of the attorney's office. Consultants will also develop a land capacity analysis if, in fact, some changes are asked for tonight, and the target delivery date would be July 14th if we could get there. Staff will also request that council schedule the joint public hearing for the comp plan adoption with the Department of Commerce as part of our Housing Accountability Act compliance for July 28th. This is the same schedule that the administrator just mentioned to you, but that's the schedule we think we can keep. For the development regulations update, in the month of July, we're going to prepare as many of those updates as we can. We're working on it a lot in the background, and we will do what we can to comply with state law, get it through the Planning Commission. We hope to have the Planning Commission working on it throughout August. We will also take those development regulations and request expedited review from the Department of Commerce, because anything that changes the development code has to be reviewed by them and the various state agencies. We're going to help them as much as we can by pointing out exactly within their own checklists where we've met their requirements, so that that expedited review is more likely to be granted and be accomplished. So we hope to have that, or we'll request that expedited review and then concurrently work with the Planning Commission in their August 13th and 27th meetings which we hope will result in a recommendation for ordinance 2026-05 to come back to the council as early as September 8th. And then we'll be able to declare both GMA compliance for our comprehensive planning efforts as well as our development code. And that's all I got.
Thank you.
I know it's big and there was this design to have more conversation. So read it, think about it, and grill us now and later.
I think we kind of get where the word comprehensive comes from. Councilmember Matthews and Councilmember Nelson.
Thanks, Mayor. I will actually yield to Councilmember Nelson. I forgot that he had a motion on the table, or had tabled a motion.
Well, I was going to ask her a question. Yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
And by the way, thank you. I really appreciate your thoroughness. It's really good.
I managed to get it done in 15 of my 20 too.
So I'm curious. So the mandatory inclusionary zoning program, it's in the draft development regulations that's in our packet today, right? So it currently exists where, lots that are 2 acres or greater, 5% are required, 80% AMI and below, and 10% below 120% AMI. And so what I'm hearing is that this isn't accounted for in any of the land capacity analysis, and
that is my yes, sir.
Okay, okay, I understand. And then, so essentially, if this stays in there, we would still have to redo the February land capacity analysis to take this into account. Oh,
yes, sir.
Okay, I understand. Okay. And then just briefly to the mayor, I had a number of motions on the development regulations that was not included in the packet tonight, but was included in last week's packet. So I sent those around by email, and I don't know how you want to handle those tonight. I assume similar to how we handled it with the elements. Okay, that's all I have.
Thank you, Councilmember Scheider.
Thank you, Emily. So with regards to the mandatory inclusionary zoning, is staff asking council to say yay or nay, we want to move forward with the mandatory? And is that something you'd like us to decide tonight?
And if you would like it to be in this comprehensive plan and in this ordinance, or if you would like to have it explored so that the various parameters are in fact kind of nailed down. And if so, then that goes to the planning commission. If you want it in this ordinance, we need to run a new land capacity analysis.
Or if we wanted it considered after the comprehensive plan, potentially, let's say, as an overlay, with the tool of an overlay instead of here, we could still run with the pros and cons of that in the future. Is that right?
I think so, yes. And I mean, it would go back to the planning commission for that discussion. So for us, our first concern is the land capacity analysis doesn't include those. And obviously the assumptions are in play. So we want to make sure we ask for the right thing. But in terms of whether you could include that in a future comp plan amendment to land use and housing, of course, or if you want to just do it as a development code amendment, that also can be done at the planning commission next year. Or we can include it now, but again, we'll have to run the new LCA.
Okay. So Mayor, I'm wondering if I could make a motion with regard to, or at some point you can request when you would like us to answer this question.
Councilor Scheider, I don't need my permission to make a motion. You can make a motion whenever you wish.
Alrighty then. I move to remove the mandatory inclusionary zoning from the current regulations to be discussed and determined at another time.
Is there a second to Councilmember Scheider's motion?
Second.
Okay, first it's moved by Councilmember Scheider and seconded by Councilmember Matthews to remove the mandatory inclusion zoning to be discussed later time. Councilmember Nelson?
Yeah, I'm going to oppose the motion because I think at this point, I'm really interested in seeing what the land capacity analysis would look like if we actually followed the Planning Commission's directions. And that goes to my original motion that's currently tabled, which is, higher max FAR only as high base FAR is needed, no change to lot coverage, and then this mandatory inclusionary zoning program. And this is all stuff that they worked for, 18 months to really key in, to dial in. They were using a scalpel. It was not just this like a blunt instrument. And so, and they talked about this in depth to get to this ending at 2 acres and 5% and 10%. And they felt like it could be tweaked later if it ended up being sort of seen as some sort of moratorium on development. If it was sort of too strict, they would want to loosen it later, but they really liked this idea. And so I don't see why we can't just go forward with what the Planning Commission has recommended and see what the land capacity analysis comes back with if we did that. And so right now we've already, changed base FAR, we've changed lot coverage, and now we're just going to completely strike the mandatory inclusionary zoning program. And I don't support that.
Thank you, Councilor Nelson. Deputy Mayor Hytopoulos.
Yeah, I agree for a number of reasons. For one thing, to give some teeth and trying out what was actually worked on by those people who worked even harder, much harder than we've had to work on this. I also just think it's a really strange look to remove any mandatory inclusionary zoning that we have been willing to consider. I mean, if you'd asked me 2 years ago, I would have been all over all types of mandatory zoning. If we're up zoning, it needs to at least somewhere be connected to mandatory inclusionary zoning. So we're getting something for it. So I just can't see any reason why we wouldn't be looking at the full menu.
Councilmember President Johnson, then Councilmember Schneider.
I think that, I don't know if this is what Councilmember Snyder is saying, but it sounds to me like we're talking about looking at it at a later date and not getting rid of it altogether, but looking at it at a later date. So I could support that.
And Councilmember Schneider, then Deputy Mayor Hytopoulos.
Thank you, Mayor. So what I have heard with my asking around is that, first of all, I just want to say that I'm grateful to the Planning Commission for having put a lot of work into this. Apparently, LMN has come back to say, not really sure what you mean by the way this trigger is set up for the 2 acres or more. And then apparently LMN was asked what kind of impact would this have on land capacity analysis, and they're just sort of saying no comment because they don't know. It's just kind of a weird way to set it up. And as I understand it, the Planning Commission said, okay, staff, could you please bring us back an alternative way of considering this? And that just hasn't been able to happen because of timing and whatnot. So with not as much information as I'd like to have, I think we would be better off pushing this off to where we could get our questions answered. And there's no guarantee that the delay we would take in the land capacity analysis would result in anything, in any difference, because there's really no precedent for defining the mandatory inclusionary zoning in this way.
Thank you, Councilmember Schneider. Deputy Mayor Hytopoulos, then Councilmember Nelson.
So a lot of things. I mean, for one thing, it does not feel like a good process to have little bits of noise coming from places. L&M's over here doing this and whatever. And I mean, things should be done, right? Something came through Planning Commission. It came to here. We don't have a problem with what they're recommending. I would rather send this to L&M and have them proceed with asking for the clarifications. I guess I would ask the city attorney as the primary source for, is there some way that if L&M gets this, comes back and says, what we need to understand from the Planning Commission, what they imagine this, whatever the problem is, I'm not sure how there's a problem because it just seems like we've got bonus density, but whatever, that is there a procedural problem with this going back to Planning Commission for clarification on what they thought that meant, or I just, yeah.
Andrew Summing, City Attorney. I don't see any procedural issue with that, but I would love to also hear the thoughts from the planning director who has a little bit more experience on this, but I don't see any issue. Yeah.
I also don't see an issue. The Planning Commission is your advisory body that the council has specifically designated to be the part that deals more with the public on these things and gets specific with it. So asking them to provide clarification and then coming back with that clarification at a later date for a public hearing is not, that's procedurally fine. It takes time, but it favors public input and inquiry, which is always something that the law appreciates. Public participation being the first thing that we have to do when we think about comprehensive plans.
Deputy Mayor?
I'll just simply say, again, I think after what we've been most after this whole time has been affordable housing. And it's to be losing the little bits and pieces that we have tried to secure. It seems like we should fight for it rather than just say, let L&M come back to us and say, can't do it, just can't do it this time. I think we should officially ask to do it and then officially hear back from them. And maybe we already have that. No, we can't do that. I mean, it just feels at the moment a little bit loose.
Planning
Manager Darren Buchanan. L&M has come back with us to respond. So the land capacity analysis that was pulled from a few weeks ago, there was a memo that was attached to it that was from them. In that memo, they basically state that we would be setting a precedent in the Pacific Northwest if we chose to go that route, because no one else in the country does mandatory inclusionary zoning based off of acre size. So they weren't able to really run an analysis on it. They gave an estimate of, I believe, 198 dwelling units would be created from that type. So staff was asking clarification and direction because it's not necessarily needed for the comp plan now. Based off the February analysis, we will meet the GMA requirements. So the kind of hope was that we would get direction to then move this as a similar parking lot item like we have with the park zone and the other items on them. Sorry, they're escaping me right now. So that this could be picked up in the following year and then added where we can flesh it out and work with the new consultants to better get something that is easily more comparable and can be calculated a little bit more efficiently.
Thank you. Councilmember Nelson, then Councilmember Lant, then Councilmember Scheider, then Deputy Mayor Hightower.
Okay, well, so just because something's unprecedented doesn't mean you don't do it. And it sounds like they were in fact able to create some sort of estimate of 198 dwelling units. And so I'm not really seeing the issue. I mean, Planning Commission discussed this in depth and decided to include this in here. And I don't really think this is the time to strike a program that's going to potentially create some affordable housing, right? Isn't that what we're all trying to do here? No, we're striking it and we're saying we're going to put it back and we're going to do it later instead of doing it now when it's here and it's done. And so I think we should have LMN do the work and include it in the land capacity analysis. So again, I'm going to oppose the motion.
Thank you, Councilmember Nelson, Councilmember Lant, and Councilmember Scheider.
Hi, thank you. So again, if you could just remind me, date-wise, we've got July 28th is tentatively scheduled for a public hearing. So going back to LMN for information right now, what would the schedule look like, do you think?
We're expecting that they will have to go back through and take about a month at least. So we know it would push us back for the comprehensive plan of the development regulations, but them too, back at least another month or two. We hope not.
In your opinion, would we still be within any kind of a time frame that Commerce expects, or would this put this jeopardize us in some fashion?
Well, I can't speak for Commerce, but I know they want the Housing Accountability Act in August. So if we're putting it back more than 6 weeks or so, then it could. I can't say that specifically. They've granted quite a lot of lenience so far, and they generally do when you are showing substantial progress. But then again, they're also paying quite a lot of attention to us.
Thank you, Councilmember Lant. And would you please speak a little bit closer to the mic,
Yes,
please?
I'm sorry.
So thank you, Councilmember Scheider, then Deputy Mayor Hightower.
Thank you, Mayor. So one of the issues about using this particular greater than a 2-acre parcel as a trigger is that it can be pretty easily circumvented by subdividing. And this was discussed at the most recent steering committee meeting. So anyway, I just wanted to share that it is easily circumvented.
Thank you, Councilmember Schneider. Deputy Mayor Hytopoulos, then Councilmember Matthews.
So a couple things. The essence of mandatory inclusionary zoning is that you mandate the delivery of the units that need to be delivered at the time of the upzone. So the whole point is right now, this council is upzoning these parcels. We can't later come in and impose, I've never heard of such a thing, impose mandatory inclusionary zoning that isn't in conjunction with it. The gift to the developer has already been given, the landowner. Isn't that correct?
I'm sorry, I didn't quite catch your.
So mandatory as opposed to voluntary inclusionary zoning, I thought needs to be, because we can make it mandatory because we are giving something to a landowner. We're giving more of something. And so we can then extract mandatory inclusionary zoning, right? Including the requirement to include X number of affordable units. We're now talking about divorcing the upzoning of Winslow from a program. We're talking about pulling a program from the code that was a mandatory inclusionary zoning program and saying, we'll look at it later. But the upzoning, the underlying upzoning would be moving forward. Can we legally come back in and impose just without giving anything else to landowners? We now say that if you're 2 acres or larger and you're going to build a development, you must include X percent of affordable units.
I think that's a complex question. I think what you're touching on is essentially, 2 major, kind of legal concepts. One is takings, right? Are we taking someone's property rights without just compensation? And then the other legal concept is, the city's inherent ability to regulate and zone. So I think the answer to your question is going to be a little bit more nuanced and will require a little bit more thought and research.
I guess I thought this was something I've read many times over the last few years about that. So I hope that that's a very solid legal opinion because we're doing that. The other thing I was just going to ask was the issue of, we should be able to adjust regulations to address, I would think, and I guess this would be a question for the interim director, to address the concern of using subdivision, et cetera, to circumvent this. Code addresses things like phasing and et cetera. And so presumably we could address that somehow. Somebody's attempting to build a development and then they say, I'm going to subdivide and now put it on 2. Isn't that possible, at least, that we can legislate against that?
Yes, we could, of course, legislate that. I've written more than my fair share of code, and some of that has been what we call daisy chaining, so that you don't do a series of short subdivisions to circumvent the long plat requirements. The question is not, can we do it in the code? It's what parameters do you wish to see us? And the fact that we need to take that back through the Planning Commission because that is an alteration of their recommendation.
Yes, Deputy Mayor.
I just want to point out that I think that I'm sorry, this is pretty important. The point here, the reason, this was a desperate act, in my opinion, to at least extract, this is the most dire situation when there is going to be a large development in Winslow and a good opportunity for affordable units, that they tried to put this in here so they could say, we all know that's the motivation. Motivation is at least let's not lose these opportunities to mandate affordability. It's more likely to be possible because of the size of the project. And so I don't think we should let go of this lightly. And again, I hope the city attorney is correct that if this is the way the council is going, that we even have the legal ability to later impose mandatory inclusionary zoning.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. You made your point. Councilmember.
Thanks, Mayor. I was going to make a motion and then I just remembered that Councilmember Schneider and I had a motion already made, so I'm
All right.
prepared.
Councilmember Schneider.
I think Emily was going to try to.
I was just going to ask Mr. Soming, in your analysis of it, can we also have a conversation about an interim zoning ordinance because an interim zoning ordinance, specifically moratoriums, are done to implement the comprehensive plan but until you can essentially make something permanent. But if I'm wrong on that, just tell me.
So the question is, can we use an interim zoning ordinance to essentially fill the gap until we have more permanent answers? Yes.
Yes, sir. That was my question.
Thank you.
There are opportunities for us to work on it immediately and later.
Councilor Matthews and Councilor Schneider.
Sorry.
Councilmember Schreiber.
I just wanted to finish my thought and I wanted to hear what she had to say. So, you know, I completely agree with not blowing this opportunity, right, to get some more affordable housing. What I don't want is for us to spend time and money and not get good answers. So if there are better ways of us taking what the Planning Commission has built up so far and making something good out of it, something that will stand the test of time and actually produce some benefit for us in terms of affordable housing, then, you know, I am all for that. I have another smaller concern with this, which is the 80% and below. I know it's only 5%, but I also don't want there to be some sort of a poison pill in all of this. So these are my concerns. I'm willing to have the vote taken, and if it is voted down, and I'm happy to have my colleagues vote it down, you know, but it sounds to me like we can make things happen after the fact that will be that I personally would like to get behind. Thank you.
Thank you. And did Deputy Mayor Hightower's some further discussion that adds new information? I can't, sorry, Councilmember Lath and Seaman. Yeah.
So just again, for clarification, there's a door number 3.
There is.
I would like to learn more about door number 3 and how this would be inserted in the comp plan in such a way that we could do the work that the Planning Commission has recommended, do it to our satisfaction, and still present a product to commerce so that we are moving forward. Is there something like that that you might suggest?
That was in fact an interim zoning ordinance that essentially says we need to implement our comprehensive plan, which is the whole point of that particular chunk of code in the state law, that says here's what we want to get to. We need to do the work to get there, and in the middle, sometimes we stop development in those areas, or there are other solutions. But I would really like the city attorney to come back and talk a little bit about what those options are and how that applies here. I think it does apply, but he is in fact the one who's charged with liability for this town. And only just one little thing, and it's out of order, I know, but I am working on code right now for unincorporated Pierce County, where in their rush to put together middle housing, because it was required, they created design standards for middle housing in infill units that is so unworkable to the development community. The development community has stopped doing anything. And there has been no middle housing in the 2 years since. So I've been working with developers in Pierce County going, okay, so the goal is to provide this middle housing. Can we tweak this code in such a way that it meets the spirit of the state law, of the county code, and what they want to do, while still providing developers with a reason to follow through? So that's the one reason I defer back to Planning Commission, other than making sure that we know what we want and that the public has had an opportunity to talk about it. But it's also to make sure that we are writing code that will be developed in the manner that you hope it will, as opposed to everyone going, well, I just won't use the extra density. Thanks very much. So that's always a possibility. Just because we zone it doesn't mean they'll come.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor Hightower.
Well, I mean, I don't know if the city attorney wants to weigh in on that. I'm imagining what we're talking about potentially would be suspending application, for example, of the upzone to the 2 acre and up parcels pending the work to actually figure this out.
Response?
Sorry, I have problems with the mic. I think that the best way to place this and to respond this is that I don't think I can, in this moment, provide a thorough answer, especially in open session.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor Hightower, we want to continue?
I guess I'm asking those who are about to vote on this to at least keep an open mind to reconsider when they get the thorough advice that they get, that it may be possible to thread this needle where, again, it's not that it doesn't, you know, for example, I'm imagining, I could be wrong, but that it sort of like holds for these special parcels, it would hold that gift to the underlying owner of the property for us to marry up the mandatory zoning. And then we could be sure we're not going to just lose the larger parcels to market rate zoning.
Further discussion on Councilmember Scheider.
So what about that door number 3? I mean, I'm really looking for something to grab onto.
I understand. I'm going to go with him and go, let's not flail. Let's make sure we know what we're saying is in fact correct and doable before we commit to that. And by that, I mean us staff and what is legally allowed.
But what does that mean for us up here right now in my motion in particular? So,
So
I mean, I'm happy to, say, don't pass that motion and I will vote against my own motion. I just don't know what the right thing to do is.
And that Councilmember Fowler Johnson, then Deputy Mayor.
I guess, we don't want to do anything drastic, but we don't want to do anything to delay what we're doing. So how do we compromise? How do we get to a point where we're not pushing back for 2-3 months while we try to answer a question that's solving a problem that we don't have yet?
Understood. I think, I think my personal thinking on that is that even in the worst case scenario, we've heard you loud and clear that needs to be very high, if not the highest thing on the Planning Commission's agenda right away.
Okay.
And if we have codes, well, not codes, if we have goals and policies in the comprehensive plan that ask for mandatory inclusionary zoning, then we have the basis we need to go back and develop implementing code for that. And have a public process that defines those parameters. That's the worst case scenario in terms of time and impact, but it would be very much our priority to make sure that is included in the development code, because that's where it will ultimately end up. In the best case scenario, we find door number 3.
So how much time is that going to take for you to bring it back? I mean, to take it to them?
If we are creating mandatory inclusionary zoning for code right now,
Yeah.
if we go to the Planning Commission, well, we would have to develop said code, and we can. And then we would need to have the Department of Commerce review it in their 60-day review cycle and then bring it back to you. It's just the wheels of bureaucracy grind slow on this stuff on purpose, so that the public has an opportunity to see what's going on, and so that the Department of Commerce can make sure that what you've asked for is in fact legally compliant with state law.
I'm gonna support that motion because I don't want to push it out for months and months.
Just time check, colleagues. We spent 25 minutes on this one motion. If there's new information to be added, I would really entertain it this time. Deputy Mayor Toplist and Councilmember Nelson.
I could be wrong, but I thought we got down on this whole track because staff wanted to know whether we wanted to go back to L&M with this, have them consider this in the land capacity analysis. And if that's the case, then we can simply say, no, don't do that, and leave the code as it is, even if they've opined it's not functional. I didn't hear that from staff. We can have some crappy code that we can fix, and it can proceed with us, where it is basically saying, at least, it is a placeholder in and of itself in the code right now that says, if you have a 2-acre parcel, you'll need to do these things. We can always amend code, we can change that, but it's a placeholder. So just correct me if I'm wrong. I thought we went all the way down this path largely because there was direction being sought as to whether to go back to L&M and ask them to include this in the land capacity analysis. I didn't know that we were being asked to necessarily remove it from the code. Is that something we can walk along and then spend more time on the ordinance later?
Yeah, Planning Manager Darren Buchanan. I guess the ask was more so direction on what to do with the mandatory inclusionary zoning. Do we include it, which then would require us to run a new LCA based off of whatever parameters that are, or do you give us feedback to edit it however you need to, and then rerun the LCA with that in it as well?
Deputy Mayor?
So if we say go forward, get it going, so there's no further delay before they get it, before L&M gets it and does this, and their reaction is, well, we don't really know what this is or how it works, but we think maybe it'll make 198 units. I mean, is there harm in that? It sounds like within our timeline, we can do this, and that allows us then to keep that piece of code as part of our record as we move this forward.
The potential harm would only be the time that would be spent for it. I can't speak to, it would be about roughly a month. So we'd be losing probably about a month.
But, okay. And
Councilman Nelson?
Yeah, I'm just going to express a little bit of frustration simply because this has been a recommendation from the Planning Commission for quite some time. And I think through several iterations of land capacity analyses, and I'm just not really understanding why this was never included. And now all of a sudden, when we're supposed to have all the information to make decisions, we're told, oh, it's not in there. And you basically have to either get rid of it or miss a deadline. And I'm kind of frustrated by that, I guess.
Well, so the original request from Planning Commission was for staff to come back with some type of mandatory inclusionary zoning. So when staff came back, it was proposed at 3 acres. And that's when Planning Commission had the discussion, decided to kind of whittle it down to 2. Based off of that, that's when we took it to LMN, and the land capacity analysis that was pulled from a few weeks ago, it spoke to their findings of that. And essentially kind of to repeat what I said earlier, to paraphrase, they said, you can do this, but no one else really does it this way. So what we were trying to do from the steering committee conversation that we had was maybe we could possibly figure out a different way to do this. Still apply to these 9 lots that are 2 acres or larger, but is it something based off of unit size? Is it something based off of whatever parameter it may be? And then could this also be considered an overlay or investing? The request was to seek clarification because it's not necessarily needed right now to be able to pass our comp plan. So it's something we could be picked up on later. If the direction from council is to figure it out and try to make it work for these 9 lots, we'll take that and we'll go back with to LMN with whatever parameters we choose. If you want us to work on those and come back with what we feel would be staff recommendation, but that again is just more time that would go into all of this.
I'll just throw in, which is the idea that I think it's necessary because this is a way you get affordable housing. Because right now we're getting to the numbers through market rate upzone. Right, we changed base FAR and that's how we're getting to the numbers. Whereas this is a different way to get there, but we don't actually have the numbers, which is the frustration. So, and I'll leave it.
Thank you, Councilmember Nelson, Councilmember Matthews, and Councilmember Franklin Johnson. I would just ask to please keep new information added. And I think people's points of view have been pretty well spelled out.
So my new information is just that clarification, and all of these reasons in the conversation of my colleagues is why I support Councilmember Schneider's motion and hopes she still supports it. Time, TIME. We're going to get there. I think this is a really, really important piece for these 9 parcels we're talking about. So I think I support the motion still.
Councilmember Franklin Johnson?
Yeah, because I'm frustrated too. It sounds like whichever way we choose, it's going to take 2 months. So I think I'm supportive of the motion also.
Deputy Mayor Hightopoulos?
So I think I know a way we can go forward from everything we're talking about. I sure hope, I understand the city attorney does not want to weigh fully in on anything right now. I would ask the motion maker to ask to include, I'm fried. Appropriate ordinance to basically suspend the application of the underlying zoning to parcels 2 acres and larger, pending the city council's work on this. And I don't know how exactly they'll work, but whatever interim control we need, as long as we don't have to do it now. We don't have to hold up anything. Commerce isn't going to care that we're going to do that. It's going to be bonus affordable housing later. But whatever we have to do to avoid, we have 9 parcels. 9 parcels of 2.5 acres or greater. All this is about is just trying to secure the opportunity to get affordable housing there. So I would ask Councilmember Schneider to consider adding that if we're going to pull the ordinance, then let's put whatever we need to in to secure the position on those larger parcels.
We're approaching 35 minutes on this. So we've had enough discussion. I'm going to discussion. I just will add my points. Councilman Schneider, I appreciate your original motion and I support that. I think we heard from, I can't remember who it said, that we have met the Housing Accountability Act. This does not necessarily meet that need. we don't need this to meet that act. And today is June 30. Remind my colleagues, those who you were newly elected, we passed that we would have this done by today, and we're still not hitting our deadlines. And so we have really, time is of essence. And the fact that we spent 30 minutes debating the motion, I don't see how this is going to be able to be resolved in a future time for that. So I would hope that the motion maker would stay by the motion, because I do support that. So having said that, I'm going to call for the question. All in favor of the original motion, please say aye. Aye. Opposed?
Nay.
We have 3 yeas and 3 nays, and the chair votes aye. We have, 3 yeas, 3 nays, and the chair votes aye. So Councilmember Nelson and Hytopoulos voted nay. Councilmember Scheidler.
Mayor, I'm wondering if Councilmember Hytopoulos would now like to make another motion that provides an interim something.
I'm not going to know exactly what to ask for, especially if the city attorney is not ready to talk to us about it now. But I would move that the council direct the city attorney to work with staff to prepare whatever sort of interim control we need to hold open the ability to impose mandatory inclusionary zoning on parcels over 2 acres.
Second.
Is moved by Councilmember the Deputy Mayor Hytopoulos. I'm so tired. The Deputy Mayor Hytopoulos to direct the attorney to come up with a draft ordinance to maintain this, and seconded by Councilmember Farnley Johnson. Would the attorney like to speak to this? Just to speak to this, just to understand if this is a doable option.
I can certainly do that.
Okay, thank you. All right. Further discussion. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Council votes 6-0. The chair votes aye, 7-0. Now do we move this full ordinance forward? Councilmember Nelson?
Yeah, I have quite a lot of motions on the development regulations that
How much time do you believe you will need for these motions, Councilmember?
maybe an hour. I have 8 pages of them that I sent around. It was originally in the packet last week when this was on the agenda, and then it was taken off the agenda because I assumed, just like the other elements, we'd all have motions to make. And this is, of course, the most important part, because this is the actual law.
Councilmember Matthews?
Okay, so why don't you just run through your motions?
But I will do this, and I mean this very sincerely, because we have really extended time tonight. If there is no second for a motion, please do not motion for discussion. If we don't have 2 votes to have it, we are not going to get to passage. So I'm encouraging my colleagues, please, to follow that rule. Councilor Matthews?
Okay, yep, I have a motion then.
Oh, wait.
Could I make a request?
Okay.
Process question.
Deputy Mayor Hytopoulos?
This is going to move a lot faster if we have some sort of ability to see what you guys are asking. I mean, so the fact that something was attached to a previous agenda, right? We've seen how this works. It takes 3 times longer if we can't just succinctly see where to look. And
I've just emailed it around to everyone. Oh, I've sent it to the whole city council distribution group. So I agree.
Okay, I have a motion in the meantime then.
Okay, we'll start with that. Councilmember Matthews?
Then we'll do this, we'll go over. I move to direct the city manager to direct staff to provide a land capacity analysis based on council direction and board ordinance 2026-05 to a future meeting for further consideration.
Councilor Matthews and Councilmember Farnley Johnson seconds.
Wait, point of order. That's ending the discussion on this entire agenda item when we had just discussed going and having motions for them.
Let's just motion. We'll still discuss it. Well, let's
No,
discuss it.
No, because that's a motion on the table. Sorry, point of order. We were going to go through all the motions.
Councilor Matthews, I now will post recognize you. Councilmember Matthews has put a motion on the floor to move this forward. It is a motion that has been seconded and it is on the floor. Councilmember Nelson, you are correct that it would do that, but this motion has already been preceded. There has been not one motion before this.
Okay,
So,
I move to table this motion until after discussion of other motions for this agenda items.
Is there a second?
Here's a second.
Okay. Table the motions are not debatable. So if the table motion means that we end discussion on this, a motion that's on the floor at the moment. So all in favor of tabling the motion at this moment, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? We have 3 yeas and 3 nays, and the chair votes nay. So we will not table this motion. Motion is on the floor.
Point of order. You've literally stopped all discussion of the development regulations.
No, the motion.
Allowing any.
You weren't recognized. Councilman Nelson, your motion was to table this motion to move this ordinance forward. That's what it was. And there was, and debate ended on that. We allowed the debate go forward because the table motion did not pass. So now the motion that has been presented by Councilmember Matthews, seconded by Councilmember Pat Lloyd Johnson, is now the motion on the floor. And further discussion on the motion on the floor. Councilmember Nelson.
Yes, I'm opposing the motion because we've apparently decided to not elect, by making this motion, we're moving this forward when we're not allowing any amendment or any discussion of the substance of the development regulations at this point. And I find this completely outrageous.
Deputy Mayor Hatopoulos.
So just from a process perspective as a functioning council, one moment before this motion, we were set to start considering motions. We discussed how we would do it. That's why I waited and asked. So from a good faith perspective, even though none of us want to be here longer, and I'm quite frankly have no hope that any motions that Mike is going to make are going to pass. And yet we owe it to the public and ourselves to go through the motions of considering changes to the development code.
Okay,
And
I'll
so-
withdraw.
Wait, Councilmember Scheider, then Councilmember Matthews, and Councilman Brown Johnson.
If this is on the table, it's been,
It's not on the table, it's on the floor now.
I mean, it's on the floor now, so we just can go through with the motions. I mean,
Yes,
we're not cutting off any conversation as far as I understand, right?
Scheider, Councilmember Matthews, since you made the motion, please.
So the motion does not cut off any conversation. If you look at what the motion says, I just went and looked it through Councilmember Nelson's. I didn't see it as a stopping conversation, but I can withdraw the motion and we can go through each and every one and then, and then just redo it.
I don't think the intention was to stop you from making your motion.
Just trying to move it on. Yeah.
It wasn't meant to be that, so.
All right.
Mayor.
Okay. Well, my understanding is now we have a motion that would move this ordinance forward. If it's the will of the body, if we move it forward, then it is essentially unamended as stated in the current policy, as I'm reading that interim city manager.
I agree with that interpretation of the current action in front of the council. I will note that as the interim planning director mentioned earlier, staff will be also providing additional information and suggested amendments to these motions in some parts to bring us into compliance with state law. So we will be bringing it back to you for a further discussion. It is of course helpful to have motions. It is late now, and I think I would suggest if we are going to, there are a couple of items that we do need to continue to address on the agenda. Maybe council would either like to take a short break now or set a time limit for how much time you want to discuss this tonight and acknowledge that we will be scheduling this. We can schedule it at the next meeting if we want to continue the discussion then, or take a little bit of time so that staff can do the necessary amendments and bring those to the planning commission if they need to go there, or come back to the council. So we've done a lot of work tonight already. I know there's a lot more to do on this. I completely understand and acknowledge that there will be council motions that need to be made. And so I'll leave it to you to decide if you want to take a short break now, if you want to do some more work on this agenda now, and then take a break after a couple of minutes. And then we'll have 3 more short items for the night.
I saw Councilmember Franklin Johnson, Councilmember Matthews, and Councilmember Deputy Mayor Mitopoulos.
I just want to reiterate that I don't believe the intention was to stop any process. There's motions that's going to be made. We know that. We're going to listen to them and vote on them. That's all I had to say.
Councilmember Matthews, then. Deputy
Yeah,
Mayor
I was just
Mitopoulos.
gonna say it's unfortunate to hear the yelling from the audience as such, and we're all just trying to get our work done here. I think we should think a little bit about the commenter who talked about Governor Dan Evans. I was just trying to get the motion through because the motion said to a future meeting for further consideration. So that's where I was trying to go.
Very good.
So.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor, and then Councilor Nelson.
So the fact is the motion would have terminated comment, but or discussion. And I really appreciate the comments by the city attorney, city manager, because I think we're tired and we had a long public comment. We have more to discuss on the agenda. I don't think we're in a good place for all of us to go into, and I don't think, quite frankly, Councilmember Nelson will get as good as a reception as he might get at all for his motions. So I think we should probably all just agree to move this to the next meeting where we can have a more energy and be at a better emotional place and mental place.
Councilor Nelson.
I do. First, I want to say I understand Councilmember Matthews where you're coming from, and I understand. And it was just a procedural point that if that motion's on the table, I can't make any motions. Right. And that was a motion to end everything. Right. And so I do apologize for my outburst, if you will. And I will say I agree with council or the deputy mayor that maybe we should just bring this to a future meeting to go through all these motions.
Yeah.
And I would also ask for a quick recess.
We'll talk about several things at one time. Okay. Councilmember Matthews.
I just wanted to clarify it. And literally the second before I said that, I said, okay, read your motion, like go through all your motions. That's what I had just said right before I gave my motion. I said, okay, Mike, read all your motions. So
Yeah. Quick point of order. We do have a live motion on the floor. That is to move this forward to a future meeting for further consideration. The discussion is not over. Didn't have to happen tonight. So that is a motion before us. Please, any further discussion? Thank you. All in favor of this motion, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? The motion to move this forward to the, yes. Let's try this one more time. Councilmember Matthews' motion and seconded by Councilmember Franklin Johnson to move this issue forward to a future meeting for discussion. That is the comprehensive ordinance 2026, adopting implementing regulations for the updated comprehensive plan and Winslow sub-area plan, etc. Okay. You got it?
yes.
Okay. All in favor of this motion, please say aye. All opposed? See a 6-0, the chair votes aye, and I would agree with the suggestion by the interim city manager that we have a 5-minute recess. Now we're moving to regular business, item 6D, and this is appointment to city council member on deputy mayor, and I will, as chair, move that we appoint Deputy Mayor Hytopoulos to continue as Deputy Mayor from July 21st, 2026 through December 31st, 2026.
Second.
Okay, it's moved and second. Any further discussion? I will just add for discussion that I think because of all the transitions in our government, I think we just need to have some continuity. It's, you know, I consider Kirsten one of my closest friends and colleagues on this council. We don't see eye to eye, but we can show that we can work together collaboratively. And I think that's the kind of message we need to send to not only our community. We're going to have a new city management. We're going to have a new leadership team. I think it's important for us as a government to have this continuity for the next 6 months. And so that's why I believe this is an appropriate motion. Deputy Mayor Hytopoulos?
I just want to speak to it and say I certainly didn't want to do it necessarily, but when he mentioned it, I thought, I think this is good for us right now because unfortunately we are having some divides up here. And having maybe two people who can have represent sort of the different sides. I hate to say that, but I think it's good to be together working on the agenda and so forth. I hope it's going to make a more inclusive, collaborative feeling for us. So that's why I am interested in accepting. Thank you.
Again, Deputy Mayor, I'm glad you accepted, and I I hope people are seeing that we can do this. We can disagree, but not be disagreeable. We can have differences of opinion, but let's keep our decorum and our emotions in check, and that's really what the job we have to do here. So I thank you for reconsidering. I'm sure I'm going to have to buy an extra drink here or something for you for do that, but but thank you very much. Any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Vote is 6-0. The chair votes aye. Congratulations, Deputy Mayor. We've got you wheeled in for another 6 months. All right. Item 6D, consider appointment of city council member to serve on the Kitsap County Capital Grant Recommendation Committee. Interim City Manager Shar?
Thank you, Council. The request is coming to you to appoint a council member among you to serve on the Kitsap County Capital Grant Recommendation Committee. This is the committee that receives and reviews applications for community investment in affordable housing, CIAH, Community Development Block Grant, and Home Investment Partnership Funds. Council can send a representative, or we can open this up to a member of the community to serve in that behalf. I will draw your attention to the dates that you need to be available if you would like to do this. There are dates in August and in September. So really just a commitment of 2 different days and to review some applications and help make this important decision. Thank you.
Any council member interested in volunteering for the council member Lamb? Okay. And council member Nelson?
I move to appoint Councilmember Lant to serve on the Kitsap County Capital Grant Recommendation Committee.
A second.
Look how fast we did that. Okay. Any further discussion on this? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Vote is 6-0. The chair votes aye, 7-0. Thank you for wanting to serve, Councilmember Lant. Appreciate that very much. And now finally, item 6E, confirm appointment to the Race Equity Advisory Committee. Councilmember Brenda Franklin Johnson.
I move to confirm the recommended appointment of Caitlin Lombardi to the Race Equity Advisory Committee, position 3, for a 3-year term ending June 30, 2029.
Second.
It's moved by Councilmember Franklin Johnson, seconded by Councilmember Scheiderer to move the appointment to the REACT Committee. Any discussion, Deputy Mayor Hytopoulos?
Yes, I have actually prepared some remarks. Having not been here last week and I have not watched the meeting. But being approached by enough people that it felt like an incredible amount of pressure to make a good decision here. And it's not easy, which I'm sure for people on both sides that this has fallen on, either side's going to feel like, well, why isn't it easy? So I'm going to read my remarks because that's my best attempt to explain my position. And before this is part of my written remarks, so excuse me, it'll make it succinct. But before I refer to this statement that I prepared, I want to say that I'm deeply uncomfortable with the position the council's been placed in tonight. Absent extraordinary circumstances, I do not believe this council should sit in public judgment of the character or conduct of any individual member of the community. I've said this many times, especially not a volunteer who has stepped forward to serve. Our volunteers deserve to know that disagreements over ideas will not routinely become public referenda on them as people. This is not a precedent I wish to establish. As to the subject of this vote, I've wrestled over the last few days with trying to sort out the many competing political, procedural, ethical, and emotional issues surrounding both the appointment itself and, more importantly, I think, the larger context in which it's being considered. In the face of that snarl of competing and highly charged issues, I've tried to determine not what outcome I personally prefer or what my positions are related to the content of the communications at issue, but what principles should guide my vote. Do I have concerns about some of this committee member's public statements? And I'm not going to use her name because, again, I don't agree with targeting people. And believe she should have chosen a different venue and a different tone as a member of a critical city committee? Yes, I actually do. Have I valued her talent and experience on the committee and believe that not reappointing her would be a loss? Yes. But fortunately, I don't feel that I need to figure out how to reconcile these competing concerns because there is no way ultimately that I can reconcile holding one appointed volunteer accountable for conduct that has become commonplace throughout our civic discourse, including at times within this council itself, and including occasions when this same committee member has been targeted by statements made in the wrong forum and in the wrong tone. If we are going to establish a new expectation, which I do think we should, it should be because we are prepared to hold ourselves to it first. Over the last few years, I have become deeply concerned about the state of our civic discourse. Increasingly, we have moved beyond ideas to questioning motives. We have begun treating policy disagreements as not simply differences in judgment, but as evidence of a person's values or character. Once we decide that those who disagree with us are somehow morally deficient, meaningful dialogue becomes impossible. We also appear to be falling into a cycle of escalation where each new breach of respectful discourse is used to justify the next. What once would have been recognized as unacceptable becomes normalized, and the standard of public discourse continues to erode. Those who engage in personal attacks bear responsibility for the damage they cause, but so do those of us who excuse, ignore, or even quietly welcome those attacks when they advance our own objectives. I am truly speaking to every single one of us, including myself. This is not the responsibility of one individual, one organization, or one viewpoint. It has involved elected officials, advisory committee members, advocacy organizations, members of the public, and yes, all of us who participate in our civic life. We all have an obligation to ask whether we are contributing to that culture or helping to change it. My hope is that at some point we will choose to prioritize strengthening our community over winning the next political battle. That would mean extending to one another the grace of assuming good faith, engaging ideas instead of assigning motives, and resisting the temptation to reduce one another to the worst possible interpretation of our words or actions. And this is what I truly hope for all of us. And in that sentiment and working together and figure out how to do it better, I will be voting to reappoint Caitlin Lombardi.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Councilmember Land.
Yeah, thank you so much. So we were all elected with different agendas. But none of the topics that are dear to each one of us individually or as a group, as noted on that council priorities from last year, none of those can be viewed in isolation. It all takes trust. It all takes collaboration. Every advisory board member signs the same ethics pledge as council and agrees to follow the municipal code and the volunteer handbook and the committee work plan and the scope of authority established by the city. And this gives us predictability. It protects the public, it protects the city, and it also protects the integrity of the advisory process. My comments last week about not supporting Caitlin Lombardi, her First Amendment rights, it was trying to really carve out, is she an individual that is working in support of the city in her advisory capacity, or is she working as an advocate for her personal work? Either of those is great. I just need to know who she is on the advisory group level that she has signed up for. Also, my comments were not really just about one opinion piece in the paper. There's more opinion pieces, there's more emails, there's more communications, and people have the right to write letters and to speak publicly and to advocate, absolutely. But when that line is blurring, and I think all of council has been forwarded over several months at least, emails that are public record requests. I don't know if any of you opened them up, but if you didn't, you really need to go back and open them up. What I saw there gave me pause about the work that committee members are doing outside of the staff knowledge base, possibly outside of any direction. Communicating directly with contractors involved in work that is not theirs to do, work that internal staff, paid staff should be doing, not people who are taking it upon themselves without direction from city council to do. That's a big transparency bob for me. That's not transparent. The public deserves to understand what role someone is playing, and staff also deserves some clear lines. The contractors deserve clear lines. Is this person representing the city? Are they the assumption would be yes. But council deserves clear lines. The community deserves to know whether someone is working on behalf of the committee or the city or their own personal self. So as a former employee, I'm also really sensitive to situations where staff is being brought into communications in a way that implies that they're agreeing or participating in some fashion. And looking at some of the documents that I've seen, I don't know how they could not be involved in these communications and still do the work that they're being asked to do, but they're being put in a very tricky position. And also, if staff did have concerns about the work that this individual wanted to go forward with, and they expressed concerns, would they also be targeted? I mean, it's very complicated, and this is about the work of the city and good governance. It's not about an individual and their rights to make statements and then hide behind the First Amendment when it suits them. A friend who still works at the city told me once, start it like you mean to finish it. So I have concerns, and this is regarding good governance. I have concerns that this committee member will not approach the work with collaboration, but aggression. I don't think the city, as you noted also in this time of transition, really has capacity to deal with this level of this level of advocacy. So I will not be supporting her reappointment. I think that there's opportunities for her for personal organizing and advocacy outside of the city.
Thank you, Councilmember Lamb. Councilmember Nelson.
Yeah. I don't know. I believe the work of REAC is very important, and I value its contributions to the council and to the community. I just think the objectives of the committee would be better served with a more collaborative representative. When I co-chaired the Diversity Advisory Committee at the Washington State Attorney General's office, we focused on inclusion, on meeting people where they are, on learning and growing together. And I just think REAC would benefit from leadership that builds a culture of inclusivity, partnership, and collaboration. I think we need to focus on lifting people up and not tearing people down. And I think culture comes from the top. This isn't just an appointment of a REAC member, this is one of its co-chairs, and she sets the tone. So I think REAC needs new leadership, and for that reason, I'm not going to support the appointment.
Thank you, Councilman Nelson. Further comments? Seeing none, call for the question. All in favor of the reappointment, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Nay.
The council votes 4-2, and the chair votes aye. The nays are Councilmember Lant and Councilmember Nelson. This appointment moves forward and approved. All right, let's move to council announcements. Anybody have to report? Anybody want to talk about AWC? I mean, okay.
Okay.
Councilmember Matthews.
Several of us, Councilmember Lant, Councilmember Schneider, Councilmember Fancher Johnson, Mayor, and myself went to Spokane for the AWC conference last week, where we really great sessions. The keynote was really blew me away. 13 ways to kill your city by
Kill your community.
kill your community. So I would really recommend that as reading, especially after some of our conversations tonight. Really, really good stuff. And then was reminded a little bit of some of the work that Councilmember Schneider and Deputy Mayor Hytopoulos and myself did as part of the Waselli group. We had our capstone, which was oh my goodness. My brain, it's too late. The circulator. And that I was, and then I was reminded by several people there, as well as our interim city manager, that we'd actually achieved our capstone. The Saturday shuttle that's been going around came out of that work that we did. So some good news to end our meeting. And so that was really good to see. And I just wanted to say that it's a pleasure to work with all of you. I hope that we can take some of what Deputy Mayor said to heart. I see some things written by council members on social media about ourselves, and I think maybe we can do better there. And yeah.
Councilmember Land.
Yeah, Association of Washington Cities was very interesting. I appreciated the opportunity to attend. I think the most spirited session was on the last day, and I think our city attorney, Andrew Soming, was part of the panel that is of great interest to our community right now, and that's automated license plate readers. It was super interesting to hear all these different perspectives, kind of some of the science behind it, some of the experiences of cities that have used it, have turned off some features of it, and are considering how to turn them back on. And of course, public records. But it was a really interesting conversation, and I wish everybody was there because it absolutely will inform how we go forward ourselves. But it was great to see our city attorney there, and he had some great words, so I appreciated it.
Thank you, Councilmember Lang. Councilmember Schneider.
Thank you, Mayor. So one of my sessions was on autonomous vehicles, and the panelists were very clear that autonomous vehicles are here. It's not a matter of coming. However, at the moment, it's pretty much focused on robotaxis, which are roughly in the neighborhood of 600 grand a piece. So when we might see autonomous consumer vehicles, is still maybe a ways out, but it certainly is something that we need to be looking at when we are doing our land use planning and making guesses as to what comes next, because it all matters, right? But we can't predict the future, so we just have to keep our eyes out.
Thank you, Councilmember Schneider. Anybody? Councilmember Franklin Johnson.
Yeah, even though I had to leave early, I did have a chance to participate in the first Black caucus that they had there. And there was about 20 of us, I believe. It was wonderful. There's so many Black leaders in Washington, especially on the other side, and they want you to know they're there. So that was great. And I did participate, I think, along with Councilmember Snyder, on a presentation that basically talked a lot about how council people and other elected officials are being targeted in the media, and not the media, in social media, and how, some of the unrealistic plans that the solutions that they offered really, led to a spirited conversation after, because their solutions would have, as far as I'm concerned, just stirred the pot even more. And we basically, everybody in the room told them that. So, yeah.
Thank you. I'll just wrap up. And Councilman Shire's point, they pointed out that one of the biggest problems with autonomous vehicles is how are we able to do all for everybody? How do you have an autonomous vehicle and pull up a wheelchair? I mean, these are real challenges. You can have it be just an Uber for people who are able, but if you're going to have it be for all, that's going to be a real technological challenge, and that's really good. And I think a lot of us, so seems like forever, but Bainbridge Pride was on the 20th. So a lot of us were there, you guys were there, and it is just the coolest event. What great bands, man, kill me. Other than, oh, and on AWC, they had a banner had my face on it, which was really a surprise. That was hilarious, right? Okay. Any other good of the order? Okay, seeing none, council meeting adjourned.